the legendary Hollywood director. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476, The Golden Globe returns. Subscriptions. Vote. Under the setting sun, Nicolas Cage skillfully approached Samuel and asked several male actors and the crew to go drink together. 8 or 9 shots were shot in the supermarket today. The one-day shooting plan was successfully completed, and the crew worked nearly 8 hours. As long as this speed can be maintained, Lyman believes that it will take another 5 to 6 weeks to complete the filming of the film's materials. Therefore, with plenty of time, he did not ask the crew to work overtime. In Hollywood, or the entire United States, with the protection of various unions for members, it is basically impossible to work overtime unconditionally. Therefore, working overtime to rush is still a serious issue. Even in some Western countries, in order to limit the exploitation of employees by companies, overtime taxes are specially levied. If Americans are asked to work overtime, in addition to dealing with the unions behind the staff, they must negotiate subsidies that satisfy all parties, and they cannot be forced. After a busy day, the crew sealed the shooting equipment and basically left the set. Lyman sorted out the shots he had taken by himself and made some marks, which would be used in later editing. Next to her, Eva was still thinking about her role with the script in hand. Playing a non-positive role was still a big pressure for her to perform. If she couldn't hold up the role, it was impossible for Lyman to not say anything, because he was the director. Or, Lyman would be more strict because of this. So, even during the break, she would think about it alone. After all, there were several talented actors in the crew, and her mistakes were always the ones that hindered the filming. Lyman was quite satisfied with Eva's attitude, and she would not ask for any preferential treatment in the crew, and worked hard to move forward. Then, as the footage increased, Lyman had another job at night, which was to work on the rough cut of the first version, and he often worked until late at night. Otherwise, how can we say that the director is always the most tired in the crew? There are too many similar trivialities. After a few days of running in, the crew of The Mist suddenly sped up the shooting progress, and also divided into 2 groups, one for the main line, and one for the sideline. Cut. Lyman poked his head out from behind the director's monitor. This scene was exactly when the religious fanatics, under Eva's command, wanted to snatch Cage's son for sacrifice, and appease the anger of the god of death. Hey, who? Why are you hiding behind and laughing? Is it appropriate for you to smile in such a serious occasion? This is a bad thing about shooting group scenes. The quality of the extras is uneven. Not to mention laughing. Some people don't move well, and they directly block the camera position by themselves, and there are even some who add to their own scenes. And a small mistake will ruin the whole shot. As soon as Lyman spoke, the assistant director decisively went over to criticize, and then readjusted the position. After a while, the main actors who had finished their makeup also got into the state, and then they did it again. Cage held his son, and faced the surging public opinion with a posture of defending him to the death. The little actor was less than 6 years old, and looked very cute. I believe that after this segment is released, it will arouse more anger from the audience towards the religious fanatics. After all, if such a child is pushed out for living sacrifice, no matter how you think about it, you will definitely hate it. In this way, the death of Eva, the leader, by a cold gun would also be a climax of applause. Then the next scene is the extremely ironic scene of birds and beasts scattering. The props team rented a real pistol. In the United States, real guns are cheaper than imitation guns. After putting blank bullets in the pistol and trying it a few times, they said to an extra, when Miss Eva finishes her lines and turns around, you take out your gun and shoot. One of the cameras will be aimed at you. You must be careful and quick. Do you understand? The extra nodded happily. Will it be dangerous? Lyman asked. No, Miss Eva has a blood bag hidden on her body. When you hear a sound, just break it directly. It will be fine. Everyone returned to their positions, and the stage manager's board was gently pressed down. The camera instantly captured Eva and the extra. Hand over the child. We only want that child. The blind followers behind him also pressed towards the child like crazy. Bang. A gunshot. The crowd suddenly quieted down and then fled. Only Eva, who was surrounded by people, fell to the ground with her hands on her chest. Okay, it's done. The filming of The Mist was completed very quickly, and the 2-month filming plan might not take that long. The reason why the filming was so smooth was mainly due to the wonderful performance of Cage and Samuel. These two, one actor and the other Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor, have been nominated for many awards, not to mention that the characters do not have particularly complex personality changes. There is not much performance pressure, and even have to hold back a little. As for Eva, simple roles are fine, and she has experience in acting in several works over the years, but when she meets several powerful actors, the number of NGs begins to increase. Compared with Cage and others, as an actor, Eva still has a long way to go. However, she is willing to work hard, and can barely maintain her presence in the camera, so as not to be overshadowed by several actors. In some shots, she even has a very eye-catching performance, which can put a certain degree of pressure on Cage. This is not an easy thing to do. After all, Cage has been acting for more than 20 years. Born into a family of actors, Coppola, he was influenced by his parents, and embarked on the path of acting early. Okay, that's all for today. The crew will have a day off tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. After the last shot was finished, the crew cheered, and began to quickly clean up the set. Good luck tomorrow. The crew producer Blake ran over and said, everyone knows that the reason why Lyman took a day off is that he was going to attend the Golden Globe Awards dinner. The Golden Globe Awards do not have professional voting judges, so the difficulty of public relations is very small, and the meaning of sharing the cake is even greater. Almost all the famous film crews can get a nomination to join in the fun. As for $1 Million Baby, with its excellent reputation and high box office of preview screenings, it has been nominated for 5 awards including Best Feature Film, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Director and Best Original Score for 2 consecutive weeks with an average score of more than $15,000 per theater. Although the Golden Globe Awards are too subjective and are basically entertainment in nature, with almost no gold content, those who should go. Because some of the organizers are Oscar judges, which can attract goodwill. That's all. At night, Lyman drove back to his home in Beverly Hills. He parked the car and took Eva upstairs. The girl was tired from the journey. She wiggled her soft body like a caterpillar, but still arched into Lyman's arms. I told you not to come back, but you didn't believe me. Lyman smiled and pinched the girl's fleshy waist. But am I your female companion? Eva raised her head and said, another ecstatic night. Chapter 477 Playing Around. Subscribe, vote. The next day, just after breakfast, Versace staff came to Lyman's house with high-end custom dresses for Lyman and Eva to choose from. No matter how much fun the Golden Globe Awards is, it still attracts attention. This year, it is broadcast live on CBS at the same time, and there are at least 10 to 20 million viewers. The brands of these dresses are rushing to come here for the best advertising. Later, Johnson also put down his work and came to attend the Golden Globe dinner. This is not an insignificant job. Many stars will let their agents be present in such a situation to prevent emergencies from happening. They can handle it properly in the first time to prevent the situation from escalating and affecting the image that has been cultivated in the hearts of fans with great difficulty. After all, it is difficult to establish a person's image, but it is easy to destroy it. When Eva tried on the dress, Lyman had already tried it on. For men, there are not many choices for formal occasions, and they all wear formal clothes. Of course, these high-end custom dresses are not given away by Versace for free, but are equivalent to borrowing, and they have to be returned after wearing. Clothes rack. After getting dressed up in the morning and accompanying Eva to contact the makeup artist in the afternoon, it was almost 3:30 in the afternoon when they finished all this. The group rushed to the Beverly Hills Hilton Hotel, the venue for this year's Golden Globe Awards. After arriving at the scene, there was still some time before the guests entered the venue, because the Golden Globe Awards ceremony would not start until 5 p.m. Western Time. The guest waiting area was already crowded with people, chatting in groups of 3 or 5. Lyman glanced casually and saw Leo, Natalie Portman, Robin Williams, Whether they knew him or not, had worked with him or not, there were few star actors present who didn't know Lyman. As the most popular director in Hollywood in recent years, he needed to be friendly and polite. Lyman took Eva all the way and soon came to the guest waiting area of $1 Million Baby. Perhaps it was a special arrangement by the organizer. Next to $1 Million Baby was Quentin's crew Kill Bill 2. Mr. Tarantino, we meet again. Lyman took the lead in shaking hands with Quentin with a smile. This time, his Kill Bill 2 was nominated for Best Actress and Best Original Score, and he himself will be the guest of honor. Although the two had a gap before, it was also a legitimate market competition. Moreover, Lyman is getting better and better now, but he himself is struggling in Miramax's plate. Not to mention the film company, the studio is an empty shell. Seeing that Lyman is still so enthusiastic, he hurriedly shook hands with him and said hello. Lyman had a smile on his face, and his eyes quickly glanced at Lawrence Bender beside him, and asked knowingly, Quentin, who is this? Quentin introduced, this is Lawrence, the producer of Kill Bill 2. Lyman certainly knew the name of Lawrence, a filmmaker who is almost tied to Quentin. The crew and actors of this guy's first famous work Reservoir Dogs were all recruited by Lawrence through his own connections. Later, Lawrence also appeared in most of Quentin's works. This is a very powerful producer and screenwriter, with very good abilities and a wide network of contacts. Lyman did not hide his intention to recruit him. Oh, is it the producer of Kill Bill 2? Mr. Bender, are you interested in joining Firefly Pictures? Our company has a lot of projects this year and we are in need of producers. Lawrence is now a partner of Quentin's studio, responsible for Quentin's projects, but Quentin's output is very low. He usually runs around and makes connections. So when he heard Lyman's words, he was stunned. He was sure that he had never dealt with Lyman, and he had never thought that someone like Lyman, who had a formal film company, would want to win him over. Mr. Last, you are not nice enough. Why do you want to poach people as soon as you meet? Quentin said in a joking tone. Actually, I would be more than happy if you could come to Firefly Pictures. I'm not as overbearing as Miramax. As long as you can come, we guarantee to provide sufficient funds for the confirmed projects. We also have channels for distribution through Warner or Lionsgate. How about it? Lyman knew that Quentin had a conflict with the Harvey brothers some time ago over the production of his friend Robert Rodriguez's project. The reason was that Harvey and Frank Miller had a disagreement over the distribution of interests during the negotiation. As for that project, it was the film adaptation of the comics in City created by Frank Miller. Haha. Quentin laughed to ease the embarrassment. Facing such an enthusiastic Lyman, he really didn't know how to react. In the end, he politely declined. He was a very loyal person, and he really couldn't bear the idea of changing the Harvey brothers who had helped him a lot. By the way, this was just Quentin coming forward for his friend. If it was his own project, Harvey would never ignore it, and would always support it to the greatest extent. Even though this man has many flaws, he is not able to achieve his current status simply by being overbearing. This guy knows very well what the bottom line is and is willing to abide by the rules of the game. You see, he would only do such things as force buying and selling and cheating contracts when he went to the third film market, such as China, small European countries and some new filmmakers who have just entered the circle, but he has never done such things in the United States. Instead, he vigorously supports local filmmakers. As for why he fell later, it was just because the political wind was not right and some people took advantage of him. You know, he has been forcing women to do this for a long time, and some people are even willing to do this for the role. Has anyone ever exposed him? Nothing happened for so many years, but after Miramax and Disney fell out, he suddenly collapsed. Who is proud and who is profitable? Isn't it obvious at a glance? In contrast, some well-known actresses who once got benefits, but came out to step on the corpse are really two-faced people. Harvey flattered when he was in power, and turned his face, and denied it when he lost power. The implication of distancing himself is too strong. However, this is the reality of society. Lyman only hoped that he was the one who caused Harvey's downfall. After chatting with Quentin and others for a while to deepen his impression, Lyman took Eva back to the crew waiting area. Not long after, a staff member reminded them to enter the set. As one of the most popular works nominated for this year's Golden Globe Awards, Million Dollar Baby was the second to appear after The Aviator. Compared with other crews, Million Dollar Baby seemed rather deserted. Except for the main actors who came, the filming team behind the scenes chose not to join in the fun because they were not nominated. Chapter 478. There are only interests in the adult world. Please subscribe and vote. Compared with the Oscars, the Golden Globe Awards are 3 Berlin film festivals behind. Lemon Rast. There is no award ceremony in the world that is not mixed with interests, but even if each regional award wants to operate for a long time, it must learn to be as self-sufficient as possible. However, even though many media people criticize the Golden Globe Awards for being good at scheming, wholesale awards, and having no credibility, the red carpet of the Golden Globe Awards is surprisingly stingy. Not only is the length much shorter than the Oscars, it may only be a little more ostentatious than the politically charged Berlin in Germany. It's only a dozen meters, while the Oscars are more than 200 meters, from outside the venue to inside the venue. It took about a few minutes for Lemon to come to the media interview area. Eva, who was originally just holding Lemon's arm, changed her posture and leaned on Lemon like a little bird, and the meaning of swearing sovereignty was self-evident. Lemon also knew that the girl was actually very insecure, so he was willing to cooperate obediently. The reporters in the media area showed excitement on their faces, and the frequency of flashlights and questions also increased a little. Eva's little tricks are always controlled at just the right place. Then, Lemon said some insignificant answers such as the mood of attending the Golden Globe Awards and the high chance of winning. Of course, no one would be stupid enough to say something sensitive and controversial. Everyone cooperated with each other and completed the task. After all, what everyone wanted was the traffic attention of the Golden Globe Awards. After the interview, after entering the venue, the crew of Million Dollar Baby was arranged at a table near the first row of the podium. At 5 o'clock, the award ceremony officially began. In the next 5 or 6 minutes, the host commented on each of the nominated movies one by one, but rarely mentioned the TV series. Although the Golden Globe Awards have been awarding TV awards since 1956, it is the Emmy Awards that really speak for TV series. Like most award ceremonies, the Golden Globe Awards also started with less important awards, starting with the TV field, and the process was very fast. And Lemon would only be alert to deal with it when the camera swept across his row, and the rest of the time he would communicate and chat with Eva in a low voice. The girl, him and the bustling Hollywood have long been inextricably linked, haven't they? As time went on, except for someone from the crew, who went up to win a Best Original Score award, the awards presented began to become more important. Natalie Portman, the little girl in Lyman, the professional, has grown up and was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for the second time with Intimates. The other competitors are Virginia Madsen's Sideways, Laura Lynn is the Kinsey Professor of Sexology, Meryl Streep's The Manchurian Candidate and Cate Blanchett's The Aviator. As expected, after introducing several nominated actors, the award presenter opened the envelope and said with a smile in the expectant eyes of some people, "The winner is Natalie Portman. Congratulations." Applause came. Natalie stood up excitedly, hugged the crew members one by one, and then walked up to the podium. Lemon had expected this result. The other competitors did not spend too much effort on public relations. Natalie Portman's acting career in recent years has been planned by her agent to win awards and raise her hopes. She was not nominated last time, so it should be her turn this time. As for whether Natalie Portman has better acting skills than Oscar winner Meryl Streep, who cares? Lemon had nothing to do, so he also watched Intimate. To be honest, the love triangle in it is quite vulgar and looks quite ironic. It seems that the director wants to say that the person who lies on the pillow and lives together day and night may not be the person they miss the most in their hearts, so they keep cheating and cheating, which is simply the reproduction of primitive animals on the prairie. Compared with the role of Matilda, who became famous at a young age, the shadow of the screen image that Natalie desperately wanted to get rid of always looms over her. Maybe it's lucky, maybe it's unfortunate, who can tell? At least, her role that ruined her image again this time made the audience remember the girl next door, rather than the entangled, extremely loveless, and promiscuous relationships between men and women. It can only be said that the path has been narrowed. After thinking through all this, Lemon only felt more boring. Obviously, the Golden Globe Awards are much more interfered by off-field factors than the Oscars. The combination of Mr. Martin and the actress Blanchett can't compete with a so-called art film, and it's a female supporting role. How can it be so magical? The award ceremony is still going on, and it is also continuing to stage the Vanity Fair where some people are frustrated and some are excited. Just like the original Time and Space, the Best Actress in the Drama category was won by Hilary Swank. Little Leo won the Best Actor, and The Aviator won the Best Drama Film. The only thing that was affected by Lemon's Little Butterfly was that the Best Director was won by Martin Scorsese. After all, Lemon had told the public relations staff before that he would strive for the actor award, and Lemon did not cooperate in any public relations dinner or cocktail party for the Best Director. The judges saw that you didn't mean it, so naturally they couldn't ask you for it. After all, it is not the film itself that is affected by the award. And so, The Aviator became the biggest winner of the Golden Globe Awards, winning the 3 Golden Globe trophies of Best Actor, Best Feature Film, and Best Director. Finally, the Lifetime Achievement Award was given to Robin Williams. Lemon felt that perhaps this winner was the least controversial. The crowd also spontaneously applauded enthusiastically, and the applause was louder than any previous time. Robin Williams undoubtedly has the qualifications. As one of the no longer young Hollywood actors, he is 54 years old this year. But he made his debut in the 1980s, and his career was at its peak in the 1990s. Even later, he became more and more popular. He is a typical late bloomer. He has been nominated for countless international awards so far, although most of them are runner-ups. However, the road to winning awards for comedians seems to be very difficult here. Jim Carrey, who is even worse than him, doesn't even like being a runner-up, let alone being a nominee. But as a comedian, what can better show the success of a performance than the laughter of the audience? Winning the applause of the audience, but not the applause of the professional judges. This is the path that generations of comedy filmmakers have been repeating. It was like this before, it will be like this later, and hopefully it won't be like this in the future. After all the awards were given, the more than 3-hour live broadcast was over. The stars present breathed a sigh of relief, quickly stretched their stiff bodies, and stood up and left. Of course, they were not going home, but to attend a series of cocktail parties in other banquet halls. As long as you want, there will never be a shortage of parties in Hollywood. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 479, Subscribe, Vote. Lemon's trip to the Golden Globes has much more symbolic significance than practical significance. Although Hollywood has never attached importance to the awards given by the Golden Globes, the attention paid to winning the awards is not low. The publicity effect on the film is also good. After all, the current regional awards, in the United States alone, apart from the Sundance Film Festival that focuses on independent productions, the Golden Globes and Oscars have huge traffic bonuses. The audience of the entire live broadcast is also the most suitable audience base. For example, the day after the Golden Globes, the screening of $1 Million Baby in more than a dozen theaters was full again, which made Lemon feel that the Golden Globes are not useless. Hilary Swank's performance in the film also made the audience feel that the Golden Globe actress deserved the title. The Hollywood Observer commented, "Perhaps Hilary is lucky. As an actress with a limited screen image, she met the extremely charming role of Maggie. Actresses who have always been ladies and vases should look at similar works with heroines. They represent the way out for future actresses." Just as Warner's public relations team was desperately building momentum for the next Oscar, Lemon had already taken Eva to the car back to the set. In the supermarket, rented by the crew, Thomas shouldered the camera and pushed the lens closer step by step to create an oppressive visual sense. The surrounding lights were cold white with a hint of yellow. In order to ensure that there was no distortion, the lighting team added some color contrast to make the actors' expressions more vivid. "Everyone, take your positions. Action." In the panoramic view from another camera position, the crowd of refugees in the supermarket was clearly divided into 3 large groups, and several small groups were bored smoking and chatting in low voices. The camera turned, and Nicolas Cage frowned and looked at the situation in the supermarket for a while, his face full of entanglement. He lowered his head, his eyes more determined. We should find a way to retreat. They are crazy. David didn't care whether the people around him agreed with his decision. He bent his waist slightly, pursed his lips, and exuded a strong sense of fatigue and boredom. Trapped in this small space, without knowing the news from the outside, whether there will be rescue, and unable to make phone calls, everyone is growing negative emotions. It only takes one opportunity for this fire to burn fiercely. David only hopes that his son will be safe before the flames rise. Lemon carefully watched the close-up shots of Cage, which were almost the only protagonists on the monitor. I just think that Cage's emotions are quite outgoing. If the audience can't feel that he has no choice, the subsequent plot will be quite abrupt. After all, so many people died in the front, and running outside is a relatively unwise choice, which means that the IQ is offline. But who made them not stand in line? As time went on, when the protagonist group ran to the back door and secretly plotted, David's role also came to an end. Cut. Very good. Lemon praised. However, filming was more important, so Cage just nodded slightly and hurried to put on makeup. Lemon did not waste any more time and quickly directed the crew to prepare for the next shot. In the following filming, the main actors were in good condition, with few mistakes, saving a lot of time. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the crew finished work again. Eva took off her makeup, changed into her own clothes, and walked quickly to Lemon, who was discussing things with producer Blake. For tomorrow's scene, we need to prepare a dozen more extras, find more professional ones, and make the scene tighter. Anyway, it's almost finished, and our budget is still sufficient, so we can shoot a large group scene. Lemon was talking about the plan and arrangements, and he saw Eva walking towards him out of the corner of his eye, nodded slightly to the girl, and explained it to Blake in a few words. Blake also took the initiative to leave, leaving the space for the two. What's up? There's a new French restaurant nearby. Let's go try it together. Lemon paused while making the arrangements. How far is it? It's about 40 minutes by car. Cage told me about that place. Can I not go? I want to sort out the shots tonight. No, take a break and relax occasionally. It's easy to get upset if you keep working. Okay. The next day, Lemon came to the crew early again. After a night's rest, he looked much better, with a hint of spring breeze on his face. Most of the crew saw the scene where Lemon drove Eva away yesterday. To be more precise, they went out for dinner and did not return to the hotel in the town to spend the night. So these people had smiles in their eyes and unspeakable speculation. Thomas, is Eva here? Lemon pulled Thomas, who was adjusting the camera position. Thomas raised his head and pointed at the crew trailer with an ambiguous smile on his face. She only came a little earlier than you, so there's no need to hide it. Can you tell me what you did last night? Lemon patted Thomas' shoulder vigorously, said nothing, and turned to walk towards the trailer. The crew members who were pretending to be busy behind him all looked at Lemon's back. Hey, did you see Eva's walking posture was a little abnormal this morning? The crew's production manager asked his companions in a gossipy voice. Did you see it too? The companion smiled awkwardly. Our director is too eager. We still have to shoot a movie. Can't he hold back? Can you hold back on that kind of thing between men and women? Once you taste it, you will know the taste. Speaking of which, wasn't I also? The two secretly teased the director and the actress about the trivial things. In the high-intensity shooting, every little bit of fun is worth talking about. Amidst the whispers, Lemon walked into the trailer. Eva was sitting in front of the makeup mirror, letting the makeup artist apply foundation to her. Well, to cover up the strawberry marks on her neck. Because they were too conspicuous, it was a definite blooper. Well, Lemon was blamed. It was all because the bed in the hotel was too soft, the night view was too charming, she couldn't help it, the atmosphere was too good. Well, if she had to find excuses, she could still find a few. The makeup artist was a white woman in her 30s. When she saw the director come in, she waved her hand, glanced at Eva secretly, and then turned and walked out of the trailer. That look made Eva's body tense subconsciously. Oh, it was so embarrassing. She was a little embarrassed when she came here in the morning, but she didn't expect that the embarrassment was still to come. For example, how to shoot today's scene, and there were scenes with several leading actors. Besides, although makeup can cover up the marks, but, well, it's still embarrassing. If she had known, she wouldn't have teased him, or something serious would have happened. Chapter 480 Bubble Pre-Summoning, Subscription, Vote. Lemon locked the trailer door. In the small space, the atmosphere gradually became subtle, a little awkward. Eva couldn't hide the haggardness between her eyebrows. After all, she didn't seem to get enough sleep last night. She lowered her head slightly, and her hands unconsciously pinched the corners of her clothes and rubbed them. "Don't you have anything to say?" After a moment, Lemon spoke first. "It's all your fault," Eva said sullenly. "How can this be blamed on me? You invited me out." Humph. Eva couldn't help blushing, and thought of what happened last night. Although she was the one who provoked it, the development of the matter was not completely controlled by her alone. Moreover, Lemon was actually a little guilty. But today's shooting can't be cancelled. After all, the scene and props are in place, and it can't be in vain. 50 or 60 people are waiting for us outside. Otherwise, you can move your role today to tomorrow and shoot the next scene first. Otherwise, my knee is still hurting now, and it must be awkward for me to shoot, Eva said softly. Then let's arrange it this way. You'll feel better if you go back to the hotel and have a good sleep. After Lemon finished speaking, he opened the car door. The bright light and the voices of the crew members around him surrounded him again. Not far away, Cage was winking at something. Well, some crew members were disappointed when they saw Lemon get out of the trailer so quickly, and Eva didn't appear behind him. The trailer for Macoop was not big, but the interior space was actually enough. Unfortunately, the body of the car didn't move at all. It also prevented those who were looking forward to gossip from seeing the most popular scene. What are you looking at? Is there something on my face? Are you ready for the shooting? Lemon was already guilty, and he was a little embarrassed and angry when he was stared at by these unscrupulous guys. "Thomas, that's you. Remember to relay the track. Today we will shoot Samuel's shot first. The props team, also rearrange it. Hurry up." The crew members who were caught in the disaster gradually dispersed, and in the end only Cage was left, and he took the initiative to come over. After all, he is an old driver. His driving skills are very stable, but his marriage is not very stable. He has a rich love history. "Lyman, I said I wasn't interested in inviting you to drink, but however, this place is too remote, and only the pub can kill time." Cage looked at Lyman with a strange look. "Don't make trouble." Lyman smiled bitterly. Then, another busy day of filming officially began. Time flies, and a week has passed in a blink of an eye. For this movie, Lyman intends to give himself some new attempts. Being a director is a profession that requires continuous improvement and learning, and shooting different types of movies can eliminate the thinking dilemma caused by repetition, allowing him to expand his horizons and filming experience. On the set, the crew will shoot the last scene today, but strangely, Thomas's face is solemn, as if he is not very happy. Everyone around him is very happy, which makes him look very special. Of course, this specialness has a reason. He will make his screen debut later, playing a supporting role who collapses and commits suicide, hanging himself with a belt, and his face is not shown. This spirit of selfless dedication touched Lemon very much, and he asked him if he was ready. If you ignore the threatening tone in the question, this scene is quite normal. But who made Thomas talk too much and always expose the shortcomings? More importantly, it would be fine if he just exposed the shortcomings, but Lemon heard it. He was talking about Lemon's dark history in the past. He tricked him into being a photography assistant, didn't pay him a penny, and tricked him into finding a large number of cheap shooting films, and even worked as a driver for free for a long time. It's not wrong for people to like to recall the past, and they should be rewarded, right? Lyman, I can't do it. I can't act. Thomas begged. There are professionals nearby. Why don't you ask me to do it? Professionals also start out as unprofessionals. Just like you didn't become a crew photographer right away, you need a familiarization process. Don't worry, you can do it. It's a very simple shot, and you don't have to move. I believe in you, Thomas. You are born with a desire to perform hidden in your bones. Lemon patted his shoulder and encouraged, we are professionals. You should have photographed corpses. It's not easy to act like that. Anyway, it's only a 2 or 3 second shot. Just like that, after Thomas said the wrong thing, he was hung on the shelf by several staff members. It looks very pitiful. But in fact, the belt buckle was not tightened in the place where the camera could not capture. It was a fake trick. The only uncomfortable thing is to stay still. And there can't be any facial macro expressions. Then, it was Cage who appeared. He sat in the manager's office in the gas station, spread out a piece of paper and wrote, I'm going to sleep now, but I want to kiss my son and whisper 2 words in his ear to give him the ability to resist the tragedy he has seen along the way. 2 words that sound very similar. One is Hartford. The other is hope. Cage glanced at the dead gas station manager, another desperate suicide. He glanced at the paper with some nostalgia, hoping that the fog would dissipate and someone would find him. In the end, he left. They will continue to move forward. Okay, pass. After repeatedly reviewing the footage and making sure there were no problems, Lemon said happily, it's finished, everyone. Put me down quickly. Thomas, who was suffocated, quickly raised his head and shouted, of course I'll put you down. Don't worry. Lemon said with a smile as he saw Thomas unbuckling his belt. In more than a month, the tight string suddenly relaxed. Everyone easily cleaned up the set, sealed the film, dismantled the equipment, settled the accommodation expenses, and paid the second salary expenses. It took another 2 days to complete each step before the crew left this small town in Ohio and returned to Los Angeles. After saying goodbye to Cage, Samuel and others one by one, Lemon did not go to the company and went home to rest first. Then he had to be busy with the post-production of the film. Starting this year, US housing prices have further increased. Due to the continued prosperity of the social economy, the real estate in Beverly Hills has increased by more than 15% compared to 3 years ago. Therefore, it is not necessarily wrong for Cage's investment team to let him invest in real estate. It is also quite profitable and stable. But the real estate bubble has already taken shape, and many Americans have gradually become accustomed to buying houses with debt, because the interest rate is too low, and the concept of advanced consumption is also very popular in the United States, and few people have the habit of saving money. Of course, no one has noticed the birth of this crisis, because the stock market is also rising, and a large number of people are entering the market to make money. Chapter 481 Hollywood Style Group. Please subscribe and vote. Firefly Pictures Office. Lemon was sitting in the boss chair reading the newspaper, occasionally paying attention to whether James Wan had come. 3 weeks ago, Lemon received a call saying that the script of Dead Silence had been rewritten, but he was busy at the time and had no time. Until now that the film was completed and Thomas had to take care of the post-production work, Lemon finally had time to discuss this matter. In the past few days, James Wan was not idle either. He was busy setting up the crew and occasionally went to direct an episode of The Walking Dead, saving Lemon a lot of time. In addition, there was the issue of actors. The investment in Dead Silence would not be too much, and the props would be very expensive. After all, there were so many lifelike dolls, so it was necessary to find some actors who had both acting experience and affordable pay. This was not difficult to find, but the difficulty was in choosing. After all, Hollywood lacked everything, but not people to act. The people hadn't come yet, so Lemon continued to read the newspaper. He was holding a copy of Los Angeles Daily News. The entertainment section was mostly about news about the upcoming Oscars. So-and-so received public praise from a famous film critic, and so-and-so won a certain award. Anyway, just praise him as much as possible to the judges. Lemon was thinking whether to notify Warner's public relations team to slow down the pace of flattery. If they praise too much, it may cause the judges to rebel. People's hearts are always unpredictable. Boss, James Wan and Ray Nava are here. The assistant came in and said, let them in, and poured 2 cups of coffee. A moment later, James Wan walked in with Nava, holding a briefcase. After the meeting, James Wan said happily, the script has been revised. According to what you said the other day, the character of the villain Mary Shaw should be more relatable to the audience. After sitting down, Warner also took the opportunity to say, Mr. Lemon, thanks to your advice. Otherwise the script's plot writing is indeed not well thought out, and some details before and after are ignored. Nothing. No matter how good the story is, it needs the right people to shoot it. Besides, the inspiration for this script comes from a nightmare, and you will inevitably fall into a deadlock in thinking. I just expressed some opinions from an outsider's standpoint. Lemon smiled and waved, asking his assistant to hand the coffee to the two of them. Did you bring the script? Yeah. After handing the revised script to Lemon, James Wan couldn't help but look at Lemon. He admired Lemon very much. Not only did he have good film performance and made a career, but he was also sincere to others. In James Wan's mind, this is an idol that he needs to catch up with. So even after the success of the Saw series, he did not ignore the opinions, and was arrogant enough to think that his work would not go wrong. After reading the new Dead Silence script, Lemon nodded with satisfaction. This version is much more logical than the original version. Mary Shaw is no longer a moral bitch, but a victim. The folk song of the cursed town can also be explained. It can be said that there is great potential for filming. So, do you have suitable candidates for the actors? Lemon asked curiously. Well, there are roughly 2 candidates for the roles. Ryan Quanten plays the protagonist Jamie, and Laura Regan plays the woman among the survivors in the town. Well, not bad. After James Wan briefly talked about the acting qualifications of the two, Lemon agreed. Ryan Quanten is a popular TV star in Australia. He has a good image, looks handsome, is photogenic, and has acting experience. Lemon can also guess that the main reason why James Wan chose him as the male lead must be to support his fellow Australian. This is indeed the case. After Ryan became popular in Australia, he tried to break into Hollywood and become an international superstar like many regional stars. After all, it is clear who has more film and television resources in Hollywood and Australia. As an actor, who doesn't have some ambitions? Moreover, he has the capital, so he is naturally willing to take risks. After a few visits, he found James Wan, because in Hollywood, Australia also survives in groups, known as the Australian Gang. With the Jews taking a good lead, everyone is more willing to gather in the unfamiliar Hollywood to keep warm and enhance their voice. Today's Australian Gang is represented by Hugh Jackman, Kate Blanchett and Hugo Weaving, and the new generation of representatives in the future will be Liam Hemsworth, Margot Robbie and Heath Ledger. Well, Troye Sivan is the 3rd generation. So, the Australian Gang still has some connections in Hollywood, and they are willing to help their own people. In the parallel universe, James Wan's works will find so many Australian actors based on this. After all, he has lived in Australia for nearly 10 years. Moreover, even if these 2 candidates are excluded from external interference, they are actually very suitable. After all, it's affordable. With the investment amount of Dead Silence, there are not many choices. Second tier and above actors are basically passed because their price is too high and it will reduce the production cost. They will not be hired. And the popular Australian stars who go to Hollywood to seek development are only slightly better than newcomers according to the rules. For example, if Ryan plays the male lead in Dead Silence, the salary will be less than $200,000, which can be said to be very economical, and it will have a good publicity effect on the Australian market. After all, the combination of local popular stars and James Wan can obviously get positive affirmation from Australian audiences. Lemon glanced at James Wan and said, "Do you have a target for the remaining roles?" "Not yet, but I have contacted CAA, ICM and other agencies and asked them to do a round of screening first." "Well, let's get this project approved as soon as possible. I will go to the legal department to draft a contract and finalize the investment situation of the project. Oh, by the way, I want to let Blue Butterfly Pictures be responsible for the distribution of this work. What do you think?" "Blue Butterfly Pictures?" Ray Warnell frowned and said, "Can you tell me more about it?" In James Wan's studio, in addition to Firefly Pictures, which accounts for the majority, Ray Warnell also has equity, and the project's interest division has always been involved with Lionsgate or Paramount. it is inevitable that a rash change of the distribution partner will be questioned. Even though they all know that Blue Butterfly Pictures is also decided by Lyman. But if there are really many interests involved, they must understand it clearly. Don't worry, Blue Butterfly Pictures is still capable of distributing such low budget movies. If there are problems with communication, theater screenings or publicity, we will definitely bear any losses caused, and this can be written into the contract. Moreover, as for the distribution commission, we can reduce it a bit for our partners, just 10% in North America. As for the publicity expenses, both parties will pay together, and the investment ratio will still be 40% for you, and 60% for Firefly Pictures. The specific salary and benefits will be calculated separately, which is the same. Okay, Warner glanced at James Wan and said, let's draw up a contract. We will set up a crew and formulate a shooting plan as soon as possible. Chapter 482 Super Bowl. Subscribe, vote. The next day, Lyman signed a distribution contract with James Wan and others. The initial budget for Dead Silence was $25 million. The original version was $20 million, but the budget was increased due to the addition of scenes in Mary Shaw's role. Firefly Pictures contributed $15 million. James Wan's director salary was $3 million. Blue Butterfly Pictures assumed half of the publicity and distribution costs and took 10% of the proceeds of the work. As for the various details, the division was roughly the same as the previous cooperation. After all, there was no much calculation in a win-win situation. Everyone was not an outsider who did not understand the rules of Hollywood, and it was difficult to cheat. After the contract was reached, James Wan immediately started the preparation work of the shooting team. Lyman continued to worry about the post-production work of The Mist. 2 days later, at noon, Blake hurried to the company's post-production editing room. Lyman, I talked with John Fellamy of Lionsgate for the whole morning, and they agreed that the distribution of The Mist should be completed by the two companies together. Lyman turned his eyes away from the editing materials and asked, what did they say? Blue Butterfly Pictures will be responsible for transcribing the film copies, promoting it to theaters, and contacting the screens and schedules. Lionsgate will lead the publicity, and Blue Butterfly Pictures will cooperate. As for offline promotion, it will all be handed over to Lionsgate. This is a basis of cooperation. Blake replied, after all, they still have enough confidence in your new film to make a profit, otherwise they probably won't agree to sign such distribution terms. But we also gave up the bulk of the offline revenue, didn't we? This is the tuition we paid, because Blue Butterfly Pictures has too few publicity and promotion resources. However, after laying the foundation this time, it will be much easier to release Dead Silence. So, otherwise they would not agree to expand the publicity channels for Blue Butterfly Pictures, and it's because we are willing to pay a tuition fee that may be considerable. It's okay if we can accomplish it. Even if they don't agree, we will still take this step. It's just a matter of how much energy and money it will cost. John has always been smart, and he must have figured it out. Besides, the growth of Blue Butterfly Pictures will not pose much of a threat to Lionsgate. On the contrary, it can also ease the pressure Lionsgate faces from the Big Six in terms of distribution. Of course, they are willing to help us. Only by muddying the waters can we fish in troubled waters. Lyman smiled and said, have they agreed to the publicity strategy we have formulated? Lionsgate agreed, but Blue Butterfly Pictures will have to pay for it. Then what is the public offer from ABC? A 50-second ad on the Super Bowl generally costs around $5.5 million. Isn't that too wasteful? Blake said, in fact, before the release of the film, it is a very good publicity strategy to concentrate on publicity for a while and cooperate with public relations on the internet. There is no need to put movie trailers on the Super Bowl. Their fees are enough for us to advertise on many TV stations, and the effect will not be too bad. Lyman thought for a while and said, let's just contact ABC. We need the popularity of the Super Bowl. This is the first step for Blue Butterfly Pictures to officially get involved in theatrical distribution. We can only succeed and lay a solid foundation. But the total investment in the film is only $30 million US. If we promote it so much, the cost may increase to $50 million. Is it too risky? If we can't recover the cost, we will still fail. Lyman patiently explained, if the promotion is sufficient, it will not be difficult to get 150 million worldwide with the quality of The Mist. It's okay. Expanding channels is important. Sacrificing a little production income will give us more room in the future. Okay, if you insist, I will let Lyman communicate with ABC as soon as possible. Blake didn't say much. After all, his position is only the deputy director of the production department, and he is not responsible for the distribution. Whether it fails or not, it is not his responsibility. It's enough to give his own advice. Moreover, it seems that Lyman rarely persuades him to change his decision. And most of the time, he proves that he is right. The company can develop so fast, which is inseparable from Lyman's accurate market vision. In this era, Hollywood movies have various marketing methods. It is also common to release movie trailers on a large scale at the Super Bowl. However, generally only large productions with an investment of hundreds of millions of dollars can afford such a generous spending. How can ordinary film crews afford it? After all, after the trailer, there will be a concentrated promotion, and no one can stop it without 10 or 20 million. Blake also thinks it is too wasteful, not that he thinks the effect of the Super Bowl is not good. Since 1978, when the NFL introduced the live performance mechanism of top singers during the halftime show, the commercial value of the Super Bowl has skyrocketed, which can be regarded as a typical case of marketing. In 1993, Michael Jackson's halftime show performance at the Super Bowl directly attracted more than 130 million viewers, and no one has surpassed it so far. Such a huge flow of traffic has also led to the price of Super Bowl advertising rising step by step, from $650,000 for 30 seconds to $3.7 million for 30 seconds today. It is simply a sky-high price for advertising space. If this money is thrown to several major TV networks, it can basically contract the trailer promotion in prime time for more than half a month. Instead of such a one-time deal, 50 seconds are gone. So it is not wrong to say that the Super Bowl is the spring festival gala of the Americans. This kind of event with the highest ratings has a stable number of viewers of about 100 million, and no other program can surpass it, and there is not even a sign of it. But being expensive also has its advantages. For Blue Butterfly Pictures, if they don't show their strength and have a good start, how can they occupy a place in the fiercely competitive Hollywood market? Publicity and distribution are as important as distribution, and the former is even more unstable than the latter. Before the resources are put into place, no one can predict whether the best effect can be achieved after the publicity. So even though Lyman has always been very confident in the quality of The Mist and feels that it will be recognized by the audience, there are still some concerns about whether it can achieve good box office results. Otherwise, he would not have asked Lionsgate to be a guarantee. As for the Super Bowl, the time is right and the schedule is suitable. Of course, he will not miss this excellent publicity opportunity and act as a second guarantee. With more than 100 million viewers, such a platform can bring huge topicality to The Mist. In comparison, it doesn't matter if a little resource is wasted. After deciding this, Lyman thought of another thing. Blake, how is the special effects work in the digital field going? It's still in the modeling and rendering stage, but it will be soon. They said that it will take at most 3 weeks to complete. However, I seem to have heard that they encountered some difficulties. What difficulties? Chapter 483 The Cold History of the Digital Field. Subscription ticket request. Digital domain is not as glamorous as it seems, or rather, all the special effects studios on the market are desperately spending money to advance their technology reserves. Blake pointed this out. Speaking of which, James doesn't want to take on this burden anymore. He wants to sell all his shares to the management, but the management doesn't have the money either. If you talk about digital domain, there are 3 people you can't avoid. One is Scott Ross, one is James Cameron, and one is Stan Winston. In 1993, the former special effects supervisor of Industrial Light and Magic, a film director, and a model sculptor Macute Master founded their special effects company together. When digital technology first emerged, they had unlimited confidence and believed that the film industry would usher in a technological revolution. In 1994, Digital Domain got its first project, True Lies, directed by James After the success of the movie, it also initially announced the existence of digital domain. That year, they reaped a lot of rewards, were nominated for an Oscar, and won the Golden Lion Award for the Budweiser beer advertisement they produced. Digital Domain instantly became the most watched visual effects company in the Los Angeles area. But visual effects are still a new thing compared to the huge Hollywood industry. A film project always needs to be controlled by budget, which also means that when budgeting for special effects shots, you can only guess. Why? Because the people who make decisions always care more about the process of buying and selling, rather than the actual price. Digital Domain is a newcomer in the industry. Even with James' support, his own output is very low, and even if it is his project, he has no right to decide who will do the special effects work for the project. The only thing James can do is to suggest that the cooperating film studios include Digital Domain in the selection range as much as possible. Because after all, the money is invested by investors like 20th Century Fox or Universal, so it is natural that they should decide who to give the work to. Can Digital Domain do it? Yes. But Digital Domain is not the only option on the market. For producers, of course, whoever offers the lowest price will do it. This involves bidding and industry suppression. When making Titanic, 20th Century Fox almost wanted to throw James into the sea to feed the sharks because the project was seriously overspent and the total budget for special effects was only $18 million. At that time, Digital Domain's biggest competitor was Industrial Light and Magic. They thought, if we work with Cameron on a movie, but he can't afford to hire his own company to do special effects, then we can squeeze out Digital Domain. With this idea, Industrial Light and Magic took the initiative to reduce the special effects budget and would rather lose money than suppress Digital Domain. Then, in order to keep the company running, James deceived 20th Century Fox excessively and expressed his willingness to accept the offer of $18 million. As a result, Digital Domain burned $27 million just for special effects, and this did not include Digital Domain's remuneration. 20th Century Fox certainly would not do such a high cost. Even though Titanic achieved unparalleled success, Digital Domain's reputation in the industry had been ruined. It signed a contract, but did not deliver. Similarly, the management of Digital Domain also had a rift with Cameron. Cameron believed that Digital Domain needed a new CEO to lead the company, but the board of directors disagreed and asked Cameron to explain the reason. Cameron also regretted founding Digital Domain at this time because he had no management ability at all, was domineering, and had a bad temper. In addition, Digital Domain had been losing money, except for making some money in 1994. The rest of the time, personnel expenses were a big problem. Moreover, Cameron himself loved to enjoy himself and spent a lot of money, and he could not afford Digital Domain, a money-eating beast. Because the business model of Digital Domain had never been successful, how far could it go with the director's personal project? From another perspective, Digital Domain's existence has left very classic works in the film industry, but it has never been independent in terms of economy. But the producers are actually not wrong. I give you the project, you complete the work for me. As for the price-cutting bidding industry suppression, it has nothing to do with them. They just need to keep the expenditure as low as possible. Therefore, if a visual effects company wants to survive, it must have a stable profit channel. But Cameron had lost confidence, and his good friend Stan Winston had also left Digital Domain, so he also wanted to sell the burden. If it weren't for the price offered by his old rival Industrial Light and Magic, which was not satisfactory to Cameron at all, and the arrogant attitude, Digital Domain would have changed its owner 2 years ago. Since then, the fate of this company that ranks among the top 3 in the special effects industry has been tossed around. First, it was sold to the Indian giant Reliance Media, and then it was sold to Hong Kong Aeolian Group in 2013, completely transforming into the VR field. Industrial Light and Magic, relying on its position as the number 1 in the industry, can get more opportunities, and has the Star Wars series as a guarantee. As for Weta Digital, it is endorsed by the New Zealand government, and the policies provided are very good. In addition, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy has just passed, and the marketing is good. Even so, it is not true that they made a lot of money, because special effects technology requires constant burning of money, and the money earned is reinvested. Knowing this, it is not difficult to understand why Cameron wanted to sell Digital Domain, a money-losing company. He did not get along with the management. He rarely went to the Digital Domain factory once a year. In the past 2 years, they basically ignored it and let them bear their own profits and losses, not to mention making money. After all, the former friends have become strangers, and it is disgusting to go to see them. As for Lyman, when he heard the news, he had the idea of buying Digital Domain. Visual effects are definitely the mainstream of future movies, and they are even mainstream now. However, it is true that the burden is heavy. Even if Cameron really wants to sell his shares, he is not selling at a low price. The market value of Digital Domain is still $300 million US. Even if it is half off at $150 million, Lyman cannot take it out. In other words, acquiring a distribution company has exhausted the savings of Firefly Pictures in the past 2 years. No matter how well The Walking Dead performs, or how much subscription fees HBO gets, the revenue share with Lyman will not be in place all at once. Hundreds of millions of dollars in funds, even if just thrown into the bank, will have a considerable amount of interest, and who the hell doesn't delay paying? Too many film directors and well-known actors have sued studios in order to get their share. Warner wants to maintain its relationship with Firefly, so it is impossible to share the revenue in advance. At most, it will not delay according to the contract. Moreover, Lyman still wants to pay this money back to Gustav, and it is not so easy to owe money to a banker. So where can he find the money? Lyman does not want to miss the digital field. Chapter 484 French capital is our own family. Please subscribe and vote. France, Paris International Airport. Going out of the not very spacious connecting passage, some company personnel from Europa Films were waiting near the airport pickup area. The leader was Luc Besson. The reason was, of course, that Lyman had flown here specially and said he wanted to discuss cooperation. Lyman acted quickly. In order to raise funds, he immediately thought of some French film capital and started to work on it. After all, it has been a long time since the French film industry wanted to get into Hollywood to share a piece of the pie. They have invested money in it, but as mentioned before, the Hollywood film market is a bit of a pitfall. If they want to distribute the film to the theaters, the big six have taken the bulk of it, and they have to bear the risks themselves. After all, they don't have Lyman's market vision, so they can't make any money at all. And if they want to make a little money, they don't have to go to Hollywood, they can make it in France. At the same time, capital from Germany, the United Kingdom and other countries are also rushing into Hollywood, such as Screen Treasures, Lionsgate, Summit and other film companies, which have initially gained a foothold. But after all, France has a different national situation. It still holds on to the glory of being the birthplace of movies in the past, and looks down on the business model of Hollywood, so it is so rigid. Occasionally there are smart people, such as Luc Besson, who is an outlier, but they are still a minority. In other words, in the current French film market, those with capital have no ability, and those with ability do not want to go. The situation is very strange. But Lyman is different. He is not so hesitant. At this moment, he left the airport and got on the car that Europa Films picked up at the airport. He was also weighing how to cut meat and get money. Although Firefly Pictures does not have much liquidity, Firefly has a lot of profitable projects. It is not a good way to pull out a few of them and get some funds first. As for the French film industry, their total market value is really not too much. For Lyman, who comes to beg for alms, he is a walking big fat sheep. Why? Firefly Pictures has a strong ability to make money with a movie earning hundreds of millions. Who doesn't envy and covet it? After all, the big six also make money, but they have too many shareholders behind them, so they can't intervene. However, Firefly Pictures was opened by a French director, so maybe they can get on the way. Besides, this time it was Lyman who took the initiative, so there is a lot of hope. Luc Besson, who came with his employees, was thinking in his mind, it would be best to acquire some shares of Firefly Pictures, so that everyone would be one of us. At the very least, he would get the investment rights of the project. Lyman didn't know that Luc Besson was thinking so much at this time. After all, Lyman was not well known at the beginning, and was just a profitable film director. Although he was important, he was not that important. It's not like now. He is getting better and better, and he is better than Europa Pictures. He has stronger profitability, but the channels are still not as good. Lemon, why did you come here today? After returning to the headquarters of Europa Pictures, Luc Besson talked to him in the office with a warm attitude. Lemon smiled and said, I came here to seek help for the better development of the company. Why? What difficulties did Firefly Pictures encounter? Well, in order to control the North American distribution channels, and no longer have to rely on the faces of the 6 major companies, I gritted my teeth and acquired one. Now the company's working capital is insufficient. I want to develop projects, but I'm powerless. Moreover, the speed of capital recovery is too slow. Warner is holding back the share of the theaters. Lemon said deliberately. Of course, he did not lie. This is something that can be found out with a casual investigation. But to say that the share of the theaters is held back is actually based on the contract. Warner is not a great man who actively refuses the benefits that should be obtained. Really? Luc Besson was very happy. Sure enough, he knew when the opportunity came. After all, if you want to say which Hollywood studio the French media pays the most attention to, it must be Firefly Pictures. After all, it is one of our own and often reports on related news. Lemon didn't have time to explain too much about his plans for this trip to Luc Besson, and then he said, if there is anything, we can talk about it tomorrow. I need to go to rest first. I'm too tired, and I haven't adjusted to the jet lag. Okay. People are here, and they really want to discuss cooperation. Are they afraid that they will run away? Naturally, Luc Besson can't be too impatient. If he is too impatient, it will be difficult to determine the conditions. Joseph, you should contact more film companies later, and it's better to disclose our needs. Lemon went to the hotel and immediately ordered, of course. He couldn't come alone to attract investment, and he also brought the company's president and the legal department. After all, he had to make good arrangements. Don't you talk to Europa Films? Joseph knew the relationship between Lemon and Europa Films, so he asked in confusion. How much money do they have in reserve? Besides, the company doesn't listen to Luc Besson alone. By the time they finish arguing, we will have already gone back. So it's best to win over a few more allies on this trip, which will also facilitate our negotiations, and take the lead. Okay, I'll do it right away. Joseph already knew about Lemon's plan to acquire Digital Domain, and he also saw how profitable special effects blockbusters are. Most of the top box office hits in recent years are special effects blockbusters. At the moment, he also felt that it would be a great reinforcement for Firefly Pictures to have its own special effects company. So he took people to contact French local film brands such as Pathé Pictures and Fox Atom. This is Dennis Bernard, CEO of Pathé Pictures, was stunned when he saw the invitation letter from Firefly Pictures sent by the company's front desk. They all saw how fast Europa Films has developed in recent years. It's not that great to say that Luc Besson is so powerful. Everyone knows that the bulk of their profits come from film distribution. And where do the good sources of films come from? Of course, Firefly Pictures provides them. Although the number is just like that, it is not good enough in the eyes of the 6 major filmmakers, but it is different in France. Everyone is in the same boat, no one makes much money, and the local filmmakers are not strong. The works produced are only sold in France, and they cannot be sold in other places. No one wants to watch 2 depressing and boring art films. Even if France has the best art foundation, such as The Chorus released by Pathé last year, which won the monthly box office champion in France, but not every artwork can achieve such quality. In general, the market is still sluggish and the box office is not selling well. It is all supported by the government's policies. Local forces like Pathé also want to catch the fast wind of Hollywood and sell movies to the world. Hollywood has signed a memorandum and is supported by the country. It uses various threats from the United States to suppress the film industry in other regions. Well, China will introduce Hollywood blockbusters, and the increase in the number of imports during the second negotiation is also the result of the struggle between various parties. Otherwise, how can Hollywood movies be sold to the world and generate power with strength? Then it would be better to directly impose a policy restriction that prohibits imports. Chapter 485. Paying money with your ability. Please subscribe, vote. If Hollywood, with its booming film market, is a 5-star hotel, then the French film market, with a market value of less than 1/10 of that of Hollywood, is probably like a dormitory bunk bed. In terms of the annual box office value alone, France is really looking up to Hollywood. As for the promotion of offline copyrights and the supporting film industry, such as studios and cinemas, it is even more shabby to the point that Hollywood despises it. Let's put it this way, Hollywood can take out the number of screens to bear 3 first-line big productions at the same time, and can also ensure that low-cost films will not be squeezed out of existence. But in France, 2 first-line productions competing at the same time will inevitably hurt both sides. And it's okay that the theaters can't compare, and the offline surrounding markets can't compare either. You must know that the total output value of Hollywood's offline market has exceeded 1 trillion, and the entire French film industry combined can't compare. This is also the reason why international capital is rushing to Hollywood, because it's really profitable. Of course, the premise is that it can be earned. At present, after receiving the news, Dennis Bernard immediately reported to the chairman of EMI Films. Their chairman started out in communications technology. He is 56 or 57 years old, but he looks very healthy. In a spacious and bright office, Pierre Dupont, the chairman of EMI, was listening to Dennis Bernard's report. 2 older men in formal suits were also listening. EMI has 3 major shareholders, and the remaining 2 are the only ones left. They are here to discuss cooperation, so it shouldn't be fake. Why? Asked a person next to him. In the past year, Firefly Pictures has made at least $400 million in profit, which is more profitable than ours. Is there any benefit in deceiving us that they want to discuss cooperation? You can't come back just to tell a lie. Haha, that's true. Firefly Pictures is still developing fast. Unexpectedly, Dennis is still a very humorous person. His words made the 2 shareholders present laugh. However, Pierre Dupont didn't know that Firefly Pictures was extremely short of money, so he wondered, they have the means to make money, why do they still look for us? When it comes to attracting investment, especially Hollywood projects, 90% of laymen will lose everything if they participate. Even the 10% of insiders will be taught a lesson. Don't ask. If you ask, it's a bitter and tearful story. Because EMI was cheated by MGM back then, they invested $30 million and made a lot of money at the box office, but after the accounts were settled, they lost $5 million. The reason is that they spent too much on publicity and promotion. As for how much, isn't it easy to do the accounting? The kind that even Wall Street investment banks can't figure out. After all, they have their own publicity and promotion resources, and they can transfer money from one hand to the other. You can't prove any price. These days, Hollywood is the most excessive in losing money based on ability. In the film industry, there are too many uncertainties in the profitability of projects. Take EMI as an example. If they have a top film project, they will definitely develop it independently. Why invite outsiders? Unless it is an exchange of interests. Businessmen, profit seeking. They are not international socialites. Dennis smiled and explained, I asked someone to investigate. Firefly Pictures is short of working capital. Moreover, we can package several projects for investment. Even if they want to cheat, they still have ways to deal with it. Pierre listened carefully, but still felt it was unreliable. If you don't have money, you can borrow money from the bank. With such good assets of Firefly Pictures, banks are willing to lend money. However, they didn't know that Lyman was still calculating the international distribution channels that would need to be established in the future, and first established good relationships with these international distributors. As for whether the project is a project or not, it seems that it doesn't matter if you listen to it. At most, you won't agree if there is no guarantee. Then, you can take people to talk to them. The negotiation team brought by Lyman settled down at the Moria Hotel not far from Europa Films. Naturally, the investment reception was also agreed with the hotel staff to help host it. As for Luc Besson, when he saw this situation, he also understood Lyman's little thoughts. He wanted more film companies to participate. The next day, the investment meeting began. Lyman also rarely took out the specific quarterly financial report of Firefly Pictures, detailing the various film projects produced and the profits, and then distributed it to every company representative present at the meeting. There are many rich bosses in France, but they are not fools. If they want people to believe in Firefly Pictures and attract funds, they must show hard power. As for hard power, nothing can impress investors more easily than direct project profit figures. Anyway, these people can also have a certain understanding of Firefly Pictures through their own channels, so it is better to be honest. After all, Lyman did not intend to deceive on this trip, and the several projects provided can also make money. After gaining trust, Lyman was talking to representatives of several large French film companies in the banquet hall of the hotel. The first thing to talk about is naturally the reason why Lyman came here, and why he wanted to attract investment. The reason is also worth verifying. That is, there is a small problem with the capital chain of Firefly Pictures, and it is necessary to introduce external funds to develop some projects first. How much investment do you need? Dennis asked. This, Lyman said with difficulty. In order to ensure the operation of the company, we plan to raise $200 million. Well, the speed of raising funds must be faster. The acquisition of digital domain must have at least $200 million in capital reserves to obtain absolute controlling rights, which was calculated early on. Lyman shook his head and continued, I still have some things to do over there. I can't stay here for long, so I need to confirm this as soon as possible. What do you think? Dennis frowned slightly. Such a big thing is still in such a hurry? It can't be a trap. Luc Besson smiled and said, I don't know how the profit distribution of the investment is calculated. Don't worry, we will guarantee the rights and interests of the investment share. To be honest, if it weren't for his identity, he would be closer to this place, more influential and reputable. Lyman could have contacted Constantine Films. Compared with French filmmakers, Germans are obviously more enterprising and adventurous, and they are richer and more powerful. Why do you say that? Because the pay of action stars in the 1990s, such as Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Bruce Willis and other actors, was hyped up by German capital. At that time, in order to break into Hollywood, they developed movies with big investments, big stars, and big directors at all costs, losing money to make a profit, and let all Hollywood practitioners know their courage. By the way, this is the project plan we have put forward for cooperation. You can take a look. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 486 Film Festival Trading Qualifications, Subscriptions, Tickets, Project Plan. Luc Besson's ears perked up when he heard about the project. You know, among the people present, he had the most dealings with Lyman and had tasted the benefits of cooperation. However, even so, he still felt that Lyman's experience in the past few years was a bit dreamy. After all, he was also a very mature film director. He thought he was very powerful to be able to reach this point today. He didn't know how much he had paid, but compared with Lyman, he was not enough. After all, 4 years ago, he was still eating under him. Without his support, there would be no film funding. However, he changed his mind quickly and faced Lyman's current status calmly. After all, he also went through this in the past. The only difference was that Lyman was more talented and succeeded faster. The reason for this is naturally Lyman's output. Not only does he have a lot of inspiration for making films, but he can also make money, which is not small. Unlike Europa films, half of the 10 films he made will be loss-making, and they can still make some money purely by relying on the income and expenditure details. Occasionally, they can encounter a box office hit, which makes them very happy. Or most of the film companies are like this. The only possible change is the ratio of profit to loss. So, it's not that the film company doesn't make money, but it doesn't have such a high success rate like Firefly Pictures. If Europa also developed a project to make money, it would have gone to Hollywood a long time ago. But this, isn't it impossible? Even its own local business is still a little bit off. Isn't it looking for death to go to Hollywood, a dragon's den and a tiger's den? So before, Europa Pictures established a cooperative relationship with Firefly Pictures, hoping to get a stable and excellent supply of film sources. Yes, we use the profit prospects of project development to finance cooperation. Is it according to what is said above? Dennis also said excitedly. He doesn't want to know why Firefly Pictures is so generous now, he just wants to get involved. Yes, generous? It can only be described as full of sincerity, because the project plan states that it is to jointly develop 2 TV series, the 2nd season of Prison Break and the 2nd season of The Walking Dead, and 2 films independently produced by Firefly Pictures in the future to jointly finance $200 million. There is no need to introduce the 2 TV drama projects. Both are high quality dramas. The latter has greater benefits. It is the kind of drama that you don't know how to make a loss. As for the independently produced movies by Firefly Pictures, there may be certain risks, but Firefly Pictures has never lost before. They are too persuasive and are willing to gamble. After all, making a movie is a gamble. Why not bet on a project that looks more stable? Are you willing to take out such a project? Some people still asked in confusion. You can think of it as an exchange, Lyman explained with a smile. We are now limited by funds, which hinders the development of the company, so we exchange future profits for the current company operations. As for the profit in the middle, it can be regarded as the interest on the loan. But this interest is higher than that of the bank. So, I have to ask you one thing. I want to set up an office in Cannes to contact various film companies from the Cannes Film Festival and distribute the copyrights of their works in North America. So I hope that you can help me expand the business of my distribution company. How about it? If these people don't agree, not everyone can take a bite of the cake of the Cannes Film Festival, and perhaps even the trade committee can't get through. After all, as a film festival with a turnover of over $1 billion per year, the importance of Cannes is much more important than the Oscars to some extent. One is international, the other is local. It seems that there is no comparison, as can be seen from the number of films participating in the competition. Lyman's words made everyone present no longer have any doubts. Sometimes, people are like this. If there is no request for obvious benefits, they will definitely feel that there is a pitfall, or wonder if there is some conspiracy. If the other party has a demand, they will feel that they are sincere in their cooperation. After all, if you need help from others, don't you have to share some benefits? Otherwise, who will help you? Then this is considered an exchange of interests. For the trading qualification of the Cannes Film Festival, this is the understanding of businessmen. My Blue Butterfly Pictures needs film sources. Whether it is distributing DVDs or distributing theaters, our current number is low. At least, this company cannot make money, and we must balance income and expenditure. Lyman smiled bitterly, but my roots in Hollywood are not deep, and it is difficult for me to participate in the business activities of the film festival. As for the public relations Oscar, that is not something that Blue Butterfly Pictures can hope for. So now we are suffering from not having enough film source channels to continue to expand the market and deepen our network. Most of what Lyman said now is true. However, Blue Butterfly Pictures is not so miserable. It still has market channels in the UK. After all, they used to do this and have many partners. But, will the distribution company still dislike too many film sources? We know. Luc Besson nodded repeatedly. The problem of the office is not a problem, but the cooperation project. Don't worry, Lyman said. We can immediately draw up a contract. No matter how much these financing funds are invested and how much share they occupy, we will guarantee the profit distribution in the future. So, the proportion of your respective investments? I will pay $50 million. Luc Besson had thought it through long ago and said quickly, well, there are 5 film companies present. If the principle of equal distribution is followed, each company should get $40 million. However, the strength comparison between companies is different. How can it be equal? As expected, Pathé Films is the largest company in the French local industry. Dennis also said, we can offer $80 million, but I have to report to the board of directors first. Dennis is now very confident in convincing the board of directors, so he will get the investment quota first. The remaining $70 million will be divided by the 3 companies. After a dispute, they also decided on their own. Lyman said again. Then, we will ensure that the investment income of the project will be settled clearly next year. Several people calculated repeatedly and felt that there was nothing wrong with this time. After all, the project income is basically divided for half a year. Could it be that Firefly Pictures dared to swallow the funds and not pay them back? The terms of the draft contract have been checked by the legal staff of several companies. There is no unclear place and no loopholes. Of course, Lyman did not think of doing anything in the contract. That would be too stupid. Just like he said, why not use future profits to exchange for the company's current development? With a special effects company, some of his plans can be better implemented. Chapter 487 Corrosion. Subscriptions. Votes required. While Lyman was still waiting for the news of the payment and staying in the hotel, the production director of Predecessor Family Entertainment was happily meeting the president of the company. Predecessor Films is a typical French film company, and it has a certain reputation in the entire European literary and artistic circles. To be honest, their works are nominated for the French César Awards almost every year. The French César is similar to the American Oscars. Of course, the influence is a bit worse. Therefore, their company is best at producing literary and artistic films. The Angel Amélie 2 years ago was produced by their company. Because they are on good terms with many literary and artistic directors, the production department has been looking for projects everywhere during this period, and now, there is already a clue. Director Jax is planning to shoot a movie recently, and he still needs investment. Forget it, I have already planned to invest the money in Lyman, and the company should not participate in the production for a while. Huh? No production? Hearing the literary and artistic thought leader who pursued the company say such words, the production director was extremely stunned and even didn't know how to speak for a while. How can we do business as businessmen? Aren't we artists? If we don't make movies, the company. The president waved his hand. Hey, it's okay, take a break. Rest. You didn't say that before, and you also said that you would support local directors more. Do you know how much money Lyman's project can make? The president suddenly said with great momentum. I went to a financing reception the day before yesterday and invested 30 million. When the money comes back next year, it can at least double. Is it really that easy? The supervisor asked uncertainly. Of course, the president thought, you should know what the company's financial report of Europa Films was last year. They only released 3 movies of Firefly films, but they made 30 to 40 million at the box office. Even if their share of the offline market is a little less, it is still very valuable. 30 to 40 million. The president was so regretful. He hated why he was blinded by the awards and reputation, and didn't try to win over Lyman. Which film company with a little strength can't give an investment of 10 or 20 million? Is it really that much? The supervisor swallowed his saliva. Can a movie be seen by tens of millions of people or millions of people? The more popular it is, the greater the value of the movie. Lyman's vision for investment is of course good, and he always takes out a movie with a huge profit margin, which is commonly known as low cost and high profit. In short, Predecessor Films is busy from beginning to end of the year, constantly negotiating with famous directors in the industry, but the profit is not as much as the profit of a popular movie. Such a wealth effect is in front of us, and can be touched. How can we not be tempted? Perhaps Predecessor Family Entertainment still had a heart to promote the development of the French film industry in the past, but as time went by, the difficulties and troubles of the company's operation had long been changed. So, when Lyman brought the project to raise funds, how could he miss the investment opportunity again, after missing it once before? Then, Director Jax. I had a hard time getting in touch with him. His films are guaranteed throughout Europe. Many film critics like his works. Maybe it will be the next Amélie. No matter, whoever wants to invest can invest. Anyway, the company has no money to invest this quarter, and it's an art film. Moreover, he spends money lavishly, and has no constraints. It will take a lot of effort to operate it after it is filmed. Even if it is operated well, it is not certain that you can make anything. There is too much uncertainty. But, the supervisor still said, we have always had a good relationship with him. If we refuse directly, I don't know if there will be opportunities for cooperation in the future. If there is no chance, then there is no chance. The president said nonchalantly, "We are not short of good directors, but directors who can bring stable profits to the company. Europa films can surpass us and become a latecomer. Isn't it because they have better box office? This is not right." The supervisor felt that he had woken up and found that the company had changed. Why is he still speaking for Luc Besson? Didn't he always say that he was a speculator, unworthy of being a director, and tarnished the reputation of French films? Why is there still a sense of dissatisfaction now? Is it dissatisfaction that Europa Films has partnered with Lyman? So I will reject director Jack's new project now? Yes. The president shook his head and said, "I understand now. Without the support of commercial films, art films will have an unstable foundation. Isn't that the case with the strong momentum of Hollywood? If they can make money, they will naturally have the spare capacity to support artworks, not to mention the prosperity of the market, which can also attract more capital investment, and the prospects of the industry will only get better. Moreover, now can be said to be a critical moment for the company's transformation. If we get on the road of Lyman, even if there is no possibility of continued cooperation in the future, we can still get involved in the Hollywood market, and maybe there will be some opportunities." Well, so that's what he had in mind. The supervisor already understood what was going on. He must have attended the financing reception and saw how much money can be made by making movies, so he decided to put the money on Firefly Pictures. If it fails in the end and the investment fails, won't he be angry again? What's the point of leaving out a co-director? Predecessor Home Entertainment has many partners. The financial road is blocked, which is a big deal. If we don't seize the opportunity, we can't even keep our position in France. Alas, the director sighed in his heart. Capital is indeed the root of evil. Even our company, which despises the pursuit of profit in movies, can be corrupted. It may also be that we didn't have the conditions before. It's not profitable to make commercial movies, so it's better to return to the field we are most familiar with. President, the director didn't have the mind to think about how difficult it was for him to work on this new project. He also wanted the company to accumulate a fortune to better support the production department. I will explain to the employees below that we will not develop any projects for the time being. Okay, the president nodded with relief. This is the first time we deal with Lyman. We must not delay things. Well, everyone will understand. The director thought, even if they don't understand, it's useless. Our company is about to become the second Europa Films. What's the point of being hypocritical? The signing ceremony the next afternoon went smoothly. After repeated inspections by various companies, Lyman signed the one-year financing project plan on behalf of Firefly Films. 5 film companies are responsible for the investment, with a total amount of $200 million. Firefly Pictures is responsible for the project operation and will return the principal after making a profit to calculate the income of each company. Of course, this also means that the bulk of the money produced by Firefly Pictures in the next year will be divided up by other parties, and they will basically have nothing to do with it. Even the 2 movies will get very little, but it's all worth it. Chapter 488 Facial Capture, Subscriptions, Tickets. Los Angeles, Digital Domain Headquarters. After 2 of the 3 founders of the company were not interested in management, all the burdens fell on Scott Ross. In order to prevent the company from falling into the dangerous situation of bankruptcy, after reaching an agreement with the board of directors, the entire special effects team not only continued to receive orders, but also continuously streamlined team members and cut some unnecessary technical research and development. Then, after Lyman came back from France with the financing funds, he rested for a night and immediately visited Digital Domain. After all, the special effects work of The Mist was still contracted by Digital Domain, and he wanted to see how the effect was. In the face of many troubles, Scott Ross also took the initiative to meet Lyman and his party at the headquarters. This is Benjamin Joseph, president of Firefly, and this is director Lyman. Following the introduction of the receptionist, several people exchanged politeness. Mr. Lyman, I was not in Los Angeles last time because of some trivial matters. I'm sorry to meet you now. At this time, Digital Domain attaches great importance to every business it can get. That's nothing, Mr. Ross. I think we should take a look at the work entrusted to your company first. Of course, we have roughly completed it. This way, please. The group came to a compartment in the warehouse, and Scott Ross personally demonstrated the special effects scene that had been produced. On the screen, a thick fog rose from the lake, slowly spreading, and spreading again, until it covered the entire town. In the thick fog, there were monsters similar to giant mantises, four-winged birds, terrestrial tentacle monsters, red-eyed locusts. It felt like a creature from another world. Of course, it was very foggy. The overall requirements were roughly the same as Lemon's requirements, and the texture was more refined. It was worthy of the high price. You get what you pay for. There was no plastic smell of the original version, and it was much more real than the one shot with a model. However, it is still a bit far from perfection. Lemon watched it several times and couldn't help but frowned and said, "Mr. Ross, why do all the monsters in the picture have the same facial expressions? Don't they have any emotional changes? It's too stiff. Can it be changed?" Scott Ross said embarrassedly, "We can only make it similar in appearance, but not in spirit." "Why? Doesn't Gollum in The Lord of the Rings have rich expressions? What I need is a similar agility." Scott had no choice but to explain this kind of amateur question. After all, the big money bag had not paid the final payment yet. Facial expression capture technology is very difficult. As for Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, Andy Serkis first went to the set with the actors to perform, and then had to go back to the motion capture studio of Weta Workshop to perform again by himself. Even though it was so troublesome, Gollum's facial expressions were drawn one by the animators, and the surveying data was remodeled. In short, according to Scott Ross, the role of Gollum in The Lord of the Rings was not only the achievement of technology, but also Andy Serkis himself. The saying that he owes him an Oscar was also because of the motion capture performance at that time. That is, he was too good. For the same scene, he had to do the matching action processing on the set and in the studio twice, and it had to be consistent. Moreover, the strength of the digital field lies in large-scale scene rendering, such as the process of the diffusion of thick fog, not how awesome the motion capture technology is. It is really awesome that Weta Digital. It is also worth mentioning that Robert Zemeckis, the director of Forrest Gump, has also become a die-hard fan of motion capture and has plunged into the technology circle. In 2004, the studio he founded, Image Mover Digital, produced the Polar Express, which was announced to be an animation that could be shot entirely using motion capture technology. Of course, facial expression issues are still a big problem, but Zemeckis has made great contributions to the promotion of motion capture technology. If the technology he developed was used, the original Star Wars Episode 1 would not have spent more than $10 million on a single motion capture, and the cost of using the technology would have been greatly reduced. Moreover, motion capture can only be performed in a dedicated studio, and the sensitivity to light is too high, and the equipment will be interfered with. In this regard, Industrial Light and Magic is also strong. Their IMO cap system can work in complex outdoor environments, but it still cannot solve the problem of facial expressions. The post-data processing stage requires a lot of manual intervention, which costs a lot, and the effect may not be very good. In other words, everyone is stuck in the improvement of facial expression technology. In addition, the reason why Digital Domain was eliminated later was that it lost completely in this technology competition because of the management and funding issues. There was no great development in technology research and development, and it was surpassed by countless younger generations. When Lemon heard these inside news, his first thought was that Weta was awesome. Because the improvement of the technical reserves of Avatar in the future is the barrier that Cameron commissioned Weta Digital to build together, and this barrier was not broken until 2015 by Industrial Light and Magic. Since it cannot be improved, or it is said that hard work may not be appreciated, Lemon did not ask for much. In these scenes, except for the monsters being a little stiff and slightly flawed, everything else is very good. And since everyone is not good, the audience will not have much to compare and will not care too much. Moreover, after the shots are edited, the worst that can happen is that there will be fewer clips showing faces, and the scene materials will be enough for the needs of the mist. So too, Lemon was very happy to accept the results and did not say anything about rework. Then, the next thing is much simpler. After signing the contract, the balance will also be paid to Digital Domain. In the relaxed mood of everyone, Lemon stopped Scott Ross, who was about to leave, and invited him to dinner. "Mr. Ross, I remember you just mentioned using capture technology to shoot animation. Do you think this market is promising?" At the table, Lemon said in a casual tone. Scott shook his head. "I don't understand the animation industry, but there is no doubt that 3D animation will be the future of computer production, and motion capture technology should still be used in live-action movies. Digital Domain, like its founders, has never participated in animation production, and does not think much of it. However, motion capture is indeed too narrow a path for animation production, and Scott is not wrong about this. Lemon has been coveting a cash cow like Pixar for a long time, but unfortunately he can't afford it at all. After all, Pixar's market value is over $5.5 billion, close to 2 Firefly Pictures. But this does not mean that he has no ideas about the animation field. Only by laying out early can you reap rewards. Of course, the focus now is to hold a considerable asset in the future craze of motion capture special effects. Chapter 489, Way Out, Subscriptions, Votes. Scott Ross's resume is very impressive. His former status as the head of the Special Effects Department of Industrial Light and Magic is also the cornerstone of his entrepreneurship. As for the reason why he started his own business, it was not entirely for selfish reasons. In order to shoot Star Wars, George Lucas founded Industrial Light and Magic on a whim to be responsible for the special effects work of the project. But he did not understand professional technical research and development. It was Scott Ross who led the team to spend 5 years turning this unprofitable company into a slightly profitable company, and turning a new studio with no foundation and technical reserves into a company at the forefront of the times. However, as the chairman of the company, George basically never showed up, like an invisible landlord. After the company entered the formal stage, he rejected the management's resolution to acquire the company's shares. It was equivalent to that the management had been working for nothing for so many years, and the method of picking peaches was too overbearing. In anger, Scott withdrew and decided to create his own special effects company. Of course, the real reason that changed Lemon's opinion of him was his thoughts on the future of movie special effects studios. "Scott, don't mind me calling you that. Actually, I'm very interested in visual effects. If possible, can we chat for a while?" Scott Ross suddenly looked at Lemon seriously. He knew that this man had become another billionaire in Hollywood with many hit movies. But Digital Domain was not in a good state, and could be sold at a low price by shareholders at any time. Perhaps he could save Digital Domain. Thinking of this, Scott Ross became more enthusiastic and more talkative. "In 1994, I tried to found a special effects trade association, hoping to bring together important figures in the visual effects industry to increase the industry's voice and customization rights. However, it ultimately failed. Because in this industry, the managers who run the companies are often not businessmen, and there is no capital behind them. And because there is no financial freedom, everyone is scared to death and has no sense of security." Just like what George Lucas retorted, "If you give them enough beer and pizza, they can do anything. We have no reason to choose not to do it, because if we don't, we can't survive." Therefore, the special effects industry looks prosperous, but it is profit-seeking and short-sighted. It only seeks quick profits and cannot last long. "Why do you say that?" Lemon clinked glasses with him, the mellow aroma of dark beer spreading on the tip of his tongue, and he didn't seem to understand what Scott said. "Because now every manager of a visual effects company will be fired for failing to make the company profitable, so why bother doing something with long-term plans? Everyone knows where each company's technical shortcomings are, but centralized public relations costs money, and there's no guarantee that it will work. In order to make a profit, you have to put it aside and ignore it. It's a very painful thing." "Then what do you think should be done?" Lemon asked carefully. "In my opinion, the most powerful special effects studios are Industrial Light and Magic, Sony Pictures, Digital Domain, Weta Digital, Method, Double Negative, and Cobimondo. A few years ago, they could also add Rhythm Color. If one of the leaders can raise $2 billion and buy the other companies, then they can completely control the entire special effects industry. That means the pricing power is in the hands of our special effects companies, not the studios. So to improve the current situation of this industry, the only future direction is mergers, locking up the last talents and the best technology, and those studios can only bargain obediently, instead of what they say. Because the most powerful special effects blockbusters must rely on world-class visual effects technology. Lemon heard this. Isn't this an industry monopoly? But it sounds like a good way out. You make a lot of sense. Lemon paused, but no one has the strength to lock up all the technologies. The studios have already taken control of the discussion. Even companies like Sony, which started out as a technology company, attach great importance to investment in this area. Scott smiled bitterly and said, yes, we missed the opportunity at the beginning, so I think the future of the special effects industry will be acquired by first-class studios, because the supply and demand relationship is impossible to change. Lemon thought to himself, this standard is correct in the future. The first-class special effects companies are all in the hands of first-class studios, but now, companies such as Warner and Paramount have not yet made efforts, because visual effects have not grown to be so important. Of course, they have enough funds, and perhaps they deliberately let the special effects industry grow wildly, and it is not impossible to pick out the best among them, and implement the acquisition plan. Lemon smiled and said, so, Firefly Pictures actually needs a suitable special effects studio to complete the industry layout. Scott changed his expression to a more serious one, and watched Lemon, the big money owner, inexplicably entangled for a few seconds, but he was still a technician in his bones, not a businessman. Otherwise he would not have been driven out of Industrial Light and Magic by George's almost forced means. Finally, he still said tactfully, I have seen the output of Firefly Pictures in recent years. Maybe Firefly Pictures does not need to support a special effects company, because most of you are feature films, and it seems that special effects technology is not used much. If there is no complementary effect, there is no way to talk about the idea of industry layout. Lemon knew why Cameron said that Scott was not a qualified company manager, and he was too thin-skinned. No wonder he couldn't beat someone like Lucas. The team brought up by himself did not have enough chips to kill the major shareholder. If it were a qualified businessman, believe it or not, the company's assets would be directly emptied by you. However, such people are not afraid of being stabbed in the back when they cooperate. If they invest money and the technical patents developed have nothing to do with Lemon, then it will be a mess. Don't worry, Scott. Firefly Pictures will have a lot of resources in the future. Special effects movies are the future of the times. All I can do is follow the trend. Besides, is Cameron going to leave digital domain? This matter is no secret in the industry. Cameron even had a special meeting with his old rival Industrial Light and Magic. As long as he is willing, everyone knows that Cameron is going to sell his shares in digital domain. Scott replied somewhat embarrassedly, yes, but not many people are willing to take over his shares. Cameron doesn't want to sell at a low price. The reason for the embarrassment is naturally the point where Cameron and the company fell out. The management denied his idea of changing the CEO of the company. The board of directors supported Scott, but Cameron was very dissatisfied. For this reason, Stan Winston also left digital domain. Chapter 490 Thinking of the Past. Please subscribe and vote. Whenever people recall the good old days with the topic of remembering the good old days, for some people, the contrast between the past and the present seems particularly cruel. Once like-minded partners parted ways because of a little interest and never contacted each other again. Recalling the past will only make people sigh. Lemon asked seriously, why hasn't anyone taken over the shares of digital domain? Your special effects technology should be pretty good in the industry, because the profit model of all special effects companies has never been mature. For those investors, the profit model is not perfect, and the special effects companies are very expensive. The output itself depends on whether the studio has demand. Who would be willing to take over? As for those special effects companies in the industry, they can complete the work themselves. Why add burden? Lemon was very satisfied with Scott's honesty. He pretended to think for a while before saying, however, I'm still very optimistic about the future of the special effects field. If possible, I want to invest in digital domain. Scott was silent for a while and then said, if it is not profitable for a long time, but a lot of investment, are you willing? I don't want to have a bad relationship with the second friend I can talk to. Scott felt that Lyman could agree with his optimistic view on the future of visual effects, and he still had a good impression of this person. Therefore, instinctively, he didn't want him to be like Cameron, who would only have sadness and doubts in the future. After all, anyone who keeps investing money but doesn't get the corresponding economic effect will be very unhappy. Cameron is not Scott. Scott is a professional technician. His passion comes from the heart. Otherwise, he would not leave Industrial Light and Magic to start a new business, and he never thought of leaving Digital Domain. Lyman said very firmly with the tone of a wealthy local tycoon who has no shortage of money, of course I'm willing, otherwise I would not have asked you out. It is precisely because I'm optimistic about this industry that I have made up my mind to invest. Perhaps in the future, the money I invest now may not be worth mentioning. Well, Digital Domain's current market value is more than 300 million. In the future, in 2011, the second year after the popularity of Avatar, the market value will exceed 700 million. Or Digital Domain has not made much progress. It has been struggling to survive by taking on jobs, and its valuation has soared with the progress of the times. For example, Weta Digital now has a market value of 600 million, which will rise to 3 billion in the future, and it is still rising. Of course, Weta Digital's shareholders are too powerful, and it is rooted in New Zealand and protected by government policies, so it can't become a major shareholder at all, so Lyman didn't take it as a target. Perhaps it can be said that Scott is so confident, based on the future of industry technology. As for Lyman, it is purely time that will verify everything. In other words, he holds shares in Digital Domain. No matter how bad it is, there will be Indian brothers who will take over in 2011, and he can still make money. It is the best time for him to enter the market now. According to the current situation, it will be easier to negotiate the price if Cameron is willing to make a move. Seeing that Scott didn't say anything, Lyman continued, I promise that I won't interfere too much in the management of the company. I will support the research and development of new technologies to the best of my ability, as long as the demands are not excessive. He paused. However, I'm willing to invest in order to obtain absolute controlling rights of the company. Even if Cameron is willing to make a move, it seems. Scott nodded. I can reduce my holdings or contact the board of directors and shareholders to let some investors cash out and leave, and they are willing to do so. But I hope the company can be stable and there will not be a major change in the management. Of course, Digital Domain is a technology company that requires professional people to lead. I can promise you that, except for sending the financial department to review, no other personnel will change. Scott breathed a sigh of relief and listened to Lyman continue. Then, I hope to make this happen as soon as possible. If this deal is reached, I will invest at least $50 million in the research and development of special effects technology. This can be written into the contract and disclosed to management. Well, as soon as this was said, with the specific financial guarantee, Scott had already thought of the company's employees' heartfelt joy, and he also smiled and said, in that case, fine, I will contact the management and board shareholders and come up with the specific articles of association as soon as possible. As for Cameron, I will find a time to contact him myself. I think if I offer $50 million to buy his 18% stake, he should be willing. Maybe it won't cost that much. He and Industrial Light and Magic's offer of $45 million were both rejected. He hasn't invested much in the past few years. Compared with the initial investment of less than $10 million, he has already made money. Negotiation? What I just said is my bottom line. It would be better if we can get it at a lower price. However, Scott, doing business is not just about how much has been invested. At the beginning, Jobs spent less than $20 million on Pixar Studios, but now the market value is so high. Can we easily convince him to withdraw with just one sentence of making money? Shouldn't getting rich overnight be the American dream that Americans pursue? There is no such thing as getting rich overnight in this world. Scott didn't care, but thinking that Lyman is French, and perhaps he has some stereotypes about the United States, he didn't say much. After all, the American dream is worthy of media coverage because it is too difficult to cross the class. If the class is not solidified, why bother to brag about the American dream? After drinking and eating, Scott left. After seeing him off, Lemon went all the way back to Firefly Pictures. Seeing that Thomas was still busy editing The Mist, he went over to help. With a stake in Digital Domain, the strength and profitability of Firefly Pictures will surely increase dramatically. Lemon became more and more optimistic the more he thought about it. He was humming a little tune while editing the material and saw Ryan striding over from the corridor, and he looked very happy. Lemon greeted him and then asked, "You look happy. Is there any good news?" Ryan had seen Lemon's inattentiveness many times. He stopped and said to himself, "Don't you care about the public relations of $1 Million Baby at all? Also, The Walking Dead has only aired the 4th episode, and the ratings have exceeded 30 million. The situation is very good. As for the Oscars, there is no way for us to intervene, even if we want to. It all depends on Warner's arrangements. Besides, even if we get the Oscar statuette, the majority of the profits will be the result of Warner's public relations, not ours. What do we need to worry about? As for the poor performance of The Walking Dead, perhaps we should be worried about it. Isn't it natural that it should perform well?" Ryan thought to himself, "Good guy, you are showing off again. What do you mean by natural?" Chapter 491 The Three Heroes of Mexico. Subscriptions, votes. The effect of entrusting Scott Ross to coordinate the shares of Digital Domain will not be seen soon. Digital Domain is short of funds, but it is also troublesome to introduce too many shareholders, both large and small, which can only be solved by them internally. Perhaps the only good news is that the board of directors welcomes Lemon's entry. After all, these people want to get returns from Digital Domain. The current environment is not good, and the competition in the field of visual effects is fierce. Having a studio as a backer can protect their asset investment in any case and increase the value. Therefore, during this period, Lemon, in addition to being responsible for the post-production of The Mist, did not pay attention to Cameron. He believed that his offer was the most favorable one, and it would be difficult for the other party to refuse. Moreover, he wanted the absolute controlling rights of Digital Domain, and must occupy the dominant position of the company. Then, if Scott did not cooperate, it would not be good for Cameron to acquire the shares in his hands first. In other words, Digital Domain is not the focus, but the focus is a special effects studio that can be controlled. Even if there is a mistake in it, can't he dig up other special effects technicians with money? It's nothing more than Digital Domain is the best choice, but not a must. On January 20th, the final edited version of The Mist was confirmed, with a duration of 115 minutes, which is more refined than the original version, and the viewing experience is still strong. The most important thing is that the ending of his film version is based on the original novel, a blank ending, rather than the anti-heroic ending of the original version. If it is based on the original version, it will be too controversial. Although it sublimates the theme, it is very annoying. Some audiences were so angry that they burned down the theaters. A real story. 2 theaters in Ohio had their screens burned. After all, anyone who sees the climax, the protagonist uses a pistol to kill several survivors who rushed into the thick fog together, including his own son. In despair, he is about to commit suicide to avoid being eaten by monsters or being used as a human nest by spiders and suffering, but he finds that the fog has dissipated. The army rescues along the way, and none of the demons in the supermarket died, but stared at him with pity. It is normal that some people with bad tempers cannot accept this ending. For example, in The Shawshank Redemption, Andy spent 20 years digging for a prison escape, but when he got out, the warden stood by and said, "Surprise, Andy. Think about it carefully, think about it carefully. Who can stand this?" Of course, director Frank always likes to play shock, which is also the reason why his works, even though they are well received, can never get high box office. Not being able to settle scores and all the characters are frustrated. How can passers-by stand this? And they will never watch it again after watching it. Even if it is The Mist, if there is no big reversal at the end, with this quality, maybe the score will be lower, but the box office will definitely be much higher. After all, many viewers just heard that watching this movie is annoying, and then they didn't watch it. Later, Lemon spent 2 days staying up late to edit a 50-second Super Bowl trailer and asked Blake to take it to negotiate with the TV station. After this busy period, even if Lemon is still energetic, he can relax and rest leisurely. After filming the first 4 episodes of The Walking Dead, Gyro left the crew. After all, he prefers making movies to TV series, but he has no new inspiration recently. So, he still looks for various scripts to read every day, or read some novels, comics and the like. One day, he was working in the studio, and a person came up from the front desk. It was the Mexican director Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu. Gyro was dressed in casual clothes, and went to pour coffee enthusiastically. Alejandro sat on the sofa, quite at a loss, occasionally looking at the layout around him, with a little envy in his eyes. He knew Gyro, but not very familiar with him. But the circle of Mexican directors is so small, and there are even fewer who can make it in Hollywood, and almost all of them can be made friends. Not long after, seeing Gyro coming over to offer coffee, Alejandro hurriedly said, "I'm sorry for coming here this time, and delaying your work." Gyro smiled indifferently, "No need to be like this." This sentence was said in Spanish. The two were originally from the same place, and they talked about talking and chatting about hometown topics, and gradually became familiar with each other. Alejandro took advantage of the good atmosphere, and changed the subject by asking, "Tuoluo, are you familiar with director Lemon?" Tuoluo had cooperated with Firefly Pictures several times, so it goes without saying that they have a good relationship. This is no secret in the industry. When he mentioned him, Tuoluo nodded and said, "My current works are all prepared and distributed by Firefly Pictures. We get along very well." This is what Alejandro was waiting for. He immediately said, "I have a script in my hand now, and I also want Firefly Pictures to help me, but I don't have the opportunity to meet him, so can you please arrange a meeting?" Firefly Pictures has a good performance, and I don't know how many filmmakers want to discuss cooperation, but there are all kinds of people here, and there are many who want to use the project to cheat money, and it is difficult to distinguish. Lemon basically only allows scripts to be submitted, and rarely meets with outsiders, unless the script is selected. But there are too many scripts submitted, and everyone has the dream of becoming famous, and Firefly Pictures probably doesn't have time to review them one by one. This is a very common thing in the industry. Tuoluo also immediately understood what Alejandro meant, which is nothing more than attracting investment. For this hometown director, Gyro recognized him from the bottom of his heart, but he did not agree directly. "I can invite him, but I can't guarantee whether he will agree or not." Thank you. As long as I can meet Director Lemon, I will ask for these things." Alejandro breathed a sigh of relief. He made 21 grams 2 years ago, which has some international fame. It was also shortlisted for the official competition unit of Venice, and the 2 leading actors and actresses won the Venice Actor Award. But even so, as an independent filmmaker, he has limited box office revenue, and can barely make a profit. He still relies on the ability to distribute through channels. So when he had a new script, it was still a bit difficult to attract investment. He first went to his old friend Alfonso Cuarón. Alfonso was the first Mexican director to make a name for himself in Hollywood. He liked the script very much after reading it, and introduced it to the production departments of Warner and Universal. However, these companies didn't like non-English works, especially those that were literary and artistic, so they directly rejected it. In the end, it was Alfonso who suggested to Gyro to find a solution. Of course, the more important point is that, although he lacks investment, he can still get it together. What's more important is the distribution channel. Alejandro was used to losing money due to poor distribution channels, and he also wanted to seek development in Hollywood. There were not enough plates in Mexico for him, so he needed a strong film company to accept him. For several months, the attitude of the Big Six was unclear, so he had to try Firefly Pictures. Chapter 492, Too Close to America. Please subscribe and vote. In the office of Firefly Pictures, Lemon met Alejandro, one of the 3 great men in Mexico, for the first time. After being invited by Gyro, he had nothing to do, and quickly met him. This man has a slightly long face and his hair grows wildly, revealing his forehead. He looks sharp, but also a little lazy, and feels very unrestrained. He is polite, but his eyes are firm and calm. Perhaps it has something to do with the fact that he has been in an environment like Mexico for many years, unlike Gyro and Alfonso, who came to Hollywood to make a living early. Just as Lemon was looking at him, Alejandro was also looking at Lemon. The first thought he had when he saw him was that he couldn't help but sigh at the other person's age. He was over 40 years old, and he was not as successful as his two fellow villagers. Compared with Lemon, he was even more embarrassed. Of course, it was just a brief thought. Life experience has long polished him thoroughly, not to mention that he is asking for help from others. Alejandro handed him the script of Babel and then quietly accepted the result. If Firefly Pictures also refused to invest and operate, he would try to find other film companies. But then, no acquaintances could help. But he would not give up. If he did not try, nothing would happen. If he tried, even if he was rejected, there would still be a glimmer of hope. Lemon read the script very quickly, and it took him only 20 minutes to go through it in his mind. He had not seen the original version of Babel, but from his past perspective, the profit value of this movie was not high. It was still about a family tragedy of a couple on vacation, which also alluded to some of the filth of the United States and Mexico. After all, for Mexico, the current national situation is getting worse day by day. It can be summed up in one sentence: too far from heaven, too close to the United States. Let's not talk about the area of Mexican land occupied by the United States since its founding for so many years. After the signing of the 1992 border trade agreement, Mexican farmers went bankrupt on a large scale under the impact of cheap crops produced by mechanization in the United States, and the Mexican government believed the lies of American free economics and watched all this happen. Furthermore, Mexico has long been the garbage dump of the United States. The indulgence and support of that kind of thing, as well as the secret suppression of government leaders who are not on the side of the United States, have resulted in a situation where the Mexican government has almost no credibility and control. And Babel happened to have accusations in this regard, such as immigration policies and the rampant drug lords. Lemon estimated that the American people were definitely not like this movie after it was made. Internationally, this type of subject matter is not popular, but perhaps film critics and juries like this meaningful work, and it is good for winning awards. Director Alejandro, your movie may be difficult to release. The support from the theaters is definitely not enough. This is a very euphemistic statement. The theaters pay the most attention to the market and are unlikely to give any support in terms of the number of screens. Although Alejandro was somewhat prepared before coming. After all, the reasons given by those who refused were similar, so it must be a problem with his script. But he was still a little disappointed. After all, he spent a lot of thought on this work. Just when he was about to say goodbye, he heard Lemon said again, "But I personally agree with the concept of the script. It is meaningful to make a movie. I just don't know what the budget of the movie is." Alejandro thought about it and said, "The specific crew has not been set up yet, but it is estimated that it will not exceed 20 million, mainly because the location is very expensive. In the movie, the scenes involved are roughly in Mexico and the United States. If it is actually shot, it will indeed cost money." Lemon nodded and said, "Okay, but what are your conditions for cooperation in the work? I can raise 7 million myself, and I hope Firefly Pictures will support the rest, but the investment ratio and distribution share, it's all according to the rules. If Gyro has talked to you about Firefly Pictures, you will know that we are very happy to maintain this win-win cooperation. As for the distribution, I will hand it over to Blue Butterfly Pictures for operation, and only take 10% of the work's income." "Thank you, Mr. Lemon," Alejandro said happily. "Well, I wonder if you have chosen any actors for the roles in the movie." "There is one. I want Brad Pitt to play the male lead. He is willing to take a pay cut, and his Plan B studio has agreed to invest 3 million. Brad Pitt? Lemon wondered how he could meet this guy again. But Lemon also knew that Brad Pitt had asked someone to give in, but what he didn't know was that Brad now listened to his agent's advice and was ready to go the film festival route to shape himself into a powerful actor. After all, he will also get old and will not always be a star with traffic. As for choosing Alejandro, it was because he won the Venice Film Festival Best Actor award in his last movie, and his ability is not bad. He also had a reason to take a pay cut to win the award. What is the reason for choosing Brad Pitt? Lyman suddenly asked curiously. It is very beneficial to the promotion of the movie. Alejandro hesitated. But his image is too much of an idol. Why not find someone more suitable? Babel needs a natural lifelike performance. As for the investment, Firefly Pictures doesn't care. When Alejandro heard this, he thought that Lyman valued the work, and said, "I'm not very familiar with Hollywood actors. Do you have any good recommendations? John Cusack or Woody Harrelson? They are both around 40 years old, and their experience is enough to support this movie. As for the heroine, I prefer Cate Blanchett, the Oscar-winning partner. For the rest of the supporting roles, just have a few more auditions." Alejandro is quite satisfied with these candidates, but the salary budget needs to be reduced to reduce the risk. Will they agree to star? Yes, as long as you mention the name of Firefly Pictures. They are all middle-aged actors, and they don't have many opportunities to play the leading role. Even if the salary is reduced a little, they can get enough space to perform. Director Alejandro, do you understand what I mean? I see. Alejandro nodded. A good role and the possible fame and honor are much easier to think about than a little pay. Especially since they are not idols, and their image cannot be idol-like. They can only prove their acting skills with one work after another. Then, I will let Firefly Pictures start the project as soon as possible and prepare for the crew. I hope you can cooperate with me. Okay, I will come up with a detailed shooting plan first. Alejandro is not ignorant of the rules of Hollywood. A detailed shooting plan is necessary as a third-party guarantee for the completion of the film. Lyman is an investor, and Alejandro can only cooperate. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 493, Strength, Subscriptions, Votes. After the editing of The Mist was completed, it took more than a week to dub, subtitle, insert narration and background music. Once the film was completed, Lyman found Lyman, the head of Blue Butterfly Pictures, to screen it internally. Most of the people sitting in the spacious screening room were the backbone of the distribution department, and the remaining small group were the post-production staff of The Mist. In addition, Nicolas Cage also came to see the effect of the film shooting. This is the first time that Blue Butterfly Pictures has officially involved in large-scale theater distribution, and everyone can't help but pay attention to it. With the slight hum of the projector, the film officially started from the light and dark painting pavilion. Although the production staff in the screening room were fascinated by the editing materials and knew very well what The Mist was about, the feeling was different as the plot progressed and the appropriate soundtrack and narration sound effects were used. When the feature film of nearly 1 hour and 40 minutes came to an end, several distribution staff unconsciously applauded. The movie is excellent, and it will be much easier to negotiate with various theaters. I think, boss, this time the company will definitely expand the theater channels. Lyman said, looking confident. Then decide the number of screens and the time slots as soon as possible, and wait a few days, and the publicity can start to build momentum for the movie. After Lyman finished his instructions, he gradually dispersed. After all, there was a lot of work to be done next, and the distribution business of Blue Butterfly Pictures was not mature, so they had to cooperate early. After Lyman left with his people, he quickly contacted the senior executives of major theaters and organized another film viewing meeting. In recent years, Firefly Pictures has had many projects, which are very profitable. The theaters do not doubt Lyman's appeal and are very satisfied with the film itself. In the initial negotiation, Royal Entertainment and other theaters are willing to provide 2,000 screens for support and about 35% of the first week's scheduling volume. The rest depends on the subsequent results. If it is good, it will be increased, and if it is bad, it will be reduced. This is a routine. In short, it depends on the profit of the film. The theaters are not doing charity anyway. In terms of the release date, the film will be released on February 11th after a week of promotion in early February, to coincide with the Super Bowl. This is the arrangement, if nothing goes wrong. Although it is half a month earlier than the early March expected by Lyman, the theater chain does not want to leave the theaters too empty, so Lyman agreed. Anyway, there are no threatening first-line productions in the entire spring schedule, so The Mist is not afraid of anyone. In February, the first to be released was Universal's medium-sized production Rivals, followed by Warner's Hell Planet, and The Mist was ranked third. The schedule was very reasonable. Lyman was not worried about the two works having too much stamina. Rivals is a comedy love movie starring Will Smith, and the box office will definitely not be bad, but the subsequent schedule will be reduced. This movie has a lot of screens at the beginning, and the audience base is also decreasing quickly. There are less than 20 days before the release, and the pre-promotion of the film is about to begin. Coincidentally, the Super Bowl was also officially scheduled on February 3rd. The atmosphere in the streets and alleys also spontaneously became hot. Even people like Lyman, who were immersed in work and had no interest in football, could feel this enthusiasm. Because many people changed into the logos and uniforms of the New England Patriots or Philadelphia Eagles in the past 2 days, and people could be heard talking about the two teams everywhere. Perhaps if you are not a Native American, you can't understand why this kind of event is so influential. At least, when Lyman arrived at the moment of the live broadcast of the event, if he hadn't voted for the halftime trailer of The Mist, he would definitely not spend time watching a group of men running around with a ball. In the living room, Eva didn't feel much about the Super Bowl. Seeing Lyman coming down from the study, she poured him a glass of water. The venue of this finals was full again, and the cheering seemed to be full of atmosphere. Of course, it is still boring for those who don't like it. Finally, after waiting for the second quarter to end, a charming blue butterfly danced quietly after the Lamborghini car promotional advertisement. At this moment, many of the audience were busy going to the toilet or buying snacks, and had no intention of paying attention to the advertisements, but there were at least 100 million viewers outside the TV. The opening logo of Firefly Pictures flashed, and on the big screen, in a supermarket under thick fog, pleading and crying came. "I don't want to die, please. I want to go in. Let me in." The man was bleeding, and kept begging through the glass door, until he knelt down. This tragic shot attracted most of the audience at once. The man was still begging, and judging from his clothes, he was still a soldier. The fog was white and hazy, except for the cold crowd watching in the supermarket. There was no sound. Suddenly, heavy background music sounded, as if a black shadow covered him in the depths of the fog. The man looked behind him in fear, and banged the glass door like crazy. But the shadow monster quickly extended its tentacles and instantly crushed the man to death. Then the shadow disappeared, leaving only a pool of blood on the ground and the inexplicably relaxed crowd in the supermarket. The impression of this moment seemed to resonate briefly with the heart, when the shadow's footsteps sounded. Just when everyone thought it was a movie similar to Alien, soon, the camera turned and Cage appeared. Although the trailer of The Mist is only 50 seconds long, Lyman spent a lot of effort editing it, basically covering the main characters and the reasons for being trapped in the supermarket. Of course, this is more to highlight the highlights of the movie. The plot is still specious in general, in order to arouse the curiosity of the audience, and go to the cinema to find out. The preview film finally came to the end. In the last picture, there was only Cage's extremely firm eyes. The picture turned black, leaving a lot of questions. For example, why are there monsters in the thick fog? Where did the thick fog come from? Why did the supermarket survivors push people out to die? Why did Cage, David, say that they were crazy and had to escape? There were too many things I didn't understand. I only saw a line of text on the big screen. Director Lyman once again teamed up with Nicolas Cage for a new film, The Mist, which will be screened across North America on February 11th. Stay tuned. This trailer will be broadcast on TVs in thousands of households, and many movie fans have temporarily put aside the Super Bowl and started discussing it excitedly. Cool. What is that monster? I want to go see it. This trailer looks interesting. Maybe I can go to the theater to support it after it is released. Why does the heroine seem so bad? Did Eva take on the villain role? Cage's acting is still so great. The movies he collaborated with director Lyman are all very good. I bought the discs of Bad Guys and Fury and watched them 3 or 4 times. Director Lyman has a new movie again. I have to go see it. I admire his fast shooting speed and the quality is pretty good. But has he changed the genre again? Something like thriller or horror? Why do I feel like it's another tragedy? The male lead won't die in the ending again, will he? This director's works always torture the protagonist. I'm afraid of it. Many directors like to use relatively tragic endings to seduce tears. I've seen too many of them. Just don't be too sensitive, and don't be fooled. I don't want to take my girlfriend to the movies, only to come back crying and all the subsequent arrangements will be ruined. You son of a bitch. Chapter 494, Heavy Money Marketing, Subscriptions, Tickets Requested. Wyrick is a very ordinary office worker. He can be said to be a movie lover. He goes to the cinema once or twice a month. However, the reason for saying primarily is that he only watches movies to kill time and entertain himself. He is very disgusted with works that are not exciting enough and profound. Or rather, he prefers popcorn works that are criticized by film critics to those that are meaningful. Unfortunately, his girlfriend has different tastes and likes to watch a French director named Lyman last, so he has to accept it, even if he is forced to. But there is no way. His girlfriend is more important than movies. After the night of the 37th Super Bowl, in addition to enthusiastically discussing how the players of the New England Patriots who won the championship performed, or the halftime show, the singers or dancers, what was also sought after was the trailer of The Mist that appeared in the live broadcast. The number of viewers of this Super Bowl was not as high as in previous years, but there was also a base of 120 million viewers. In addition, the suspense given by the edited trailer was very large. Just like the title of the film, it was like a fog that could not see through the overall situation, which attracted the attention of many viewers. Through word of mouth, most movie fans knew that Lyman's new work would be released in just one day. The Super Bowl at this time deserves to charge such high advertising fees. The platform has amazing influence, and the studio certainly knows the role of the Super Bowl. But the key is that the spring schedule is really not worth the effort. Too much distribution expenditure is a big risk in itself. After all, the publicity effect is very good. If the quality does not meet the standard, the possibility of being criticized is too great. This is a problem caused by excessive marketing itself, such as a certain castle. But Blue Butterfly Pictures is still very confident in the work, and the theater previews almost unanimously feel that the market prospects are very considerable. The next day, Blue Butterfly Pictures threw in another $5 million to contact the media and build momentum online, and the discussion heat rose sharply. The main creators of the crew went to major talk shows and TV variety shows for publicity. Posters and hard advertisements were all over the crowds, shopping malls, office buildings, cinemas, everywhere. The consequence of this is that nearly 60% of the publicity channels are occupied by The Mist. Even after several days of release, the popularity of the rivals of all people with good box office performance was suppressed by The Mist. Such a big move is also like water. After a week, the publicity cost exceeded $30 million. The first step of the distribution company is very critical. Lyman has already decided to make a big move. Otherwise, spending money bit by bit, although it will last for a long time, will not have such an effect. However, it is common for the film industry that the cost of publicity and distribution is higher than that of production. Of course, the accounts are not calculated in this way. After all, many film companies are backed by large media groups, which make better use of resources and spend much less. For example, if the distribution of The Mist is handed over to the Big Six, they will not only not need to spend so much money to achieve the same popularity effect, but also make a lot of money from it. After all, the advertising companies or newspapers and publications on the market have the shadow of the Big Six parent companies behind them. Anyway, newspapers in the United States can be founded without government capital, and the national conditions are different. But for Blue Butterfly Pictures, these expenses are justified. The prices of invitations to pages by major paper media for public relations are almost public. If you don't spend money, who will give you pages? Lyman does not expect to directly conquer the market for publicity resources. He only wants to have a relationship, find out the way, and be able to distribute low-cost and medium-cost movies. Otherwise, the distribution of blockbuster films is already important for publicity and promotion, and the channel costs cannot be saved. Wouldn't it be a multiplication of risks? It would be better to give the share to the 6 major companies, at least they are qualified to take it. The road must be taken step by step. It is good to lay a solid foundation and gain a firm foothold this time. After all, even if you have money, it is also a skill to spend it smoothly. Not everyone can contact so many media to help build momentum. If it were an outsider, perhaps 30 million would be spent, and most of it would be swallowed up. It is better to do it with Blue Butterfly Pictures. At least, we are not unprepared. For The Mist, we cooperated with Lionsgate and made use of the publicity network established by them. Fortunately, the momentum has been created. Otherwise, it would not be good enough to sacrifice the market interests of The Mist. It would be a headache later. In the office of Blue Butterfly Pictures, Lyman saw the market report of the internal investigation and breathed a sigh of relief. Lyman, who was sitting opposite, smiled and said, "Yeah, after spending so much money, if we still waste the topic heat of the Super Bowl, the start of The Mist will be a nightmare level. We spent money, increased the risk of the film, and still didn't achieve the effect." The two said this because the heat dropped rapidly in the week after the Super Bowl. After all, the game was over, and the discussion would naturally go downhill. However, this wave of money-burning marketing by Blue Butterfly Pictures has raised the attention of The Mist to a higher level, and the topic hype that continues the heat is very smooth. Lyman, are you really not going to participate in the promotion activities of The Mist? No. Lyman shook his head and said, "It's thankless for me to show up. There is no need. It's enough to have Cage and Eva to cooperate with the promotion. I'm a director. How can I always participate in activities?" Lyman couldn't persuade Lyman, so he gave up. As far as he was concerned, the behind-the-scenes worker should return to the backstage in the end. Too much exposure is not good for the director. Lyman doesn't need these. As long as he keeps launching good works, he will naturally be recognized by fans and audiences. 2005, February 11th. The premiere of The Mist was held at the China Grand Theatre. In an instant, it overshadowed the works currently being shown on the market. Universal's Rivals was originally very popular. In the original time and space, this film would have made more than 170 million in the domestic box office in North America. Now it has been released for nearly 9 days, and has not yet made 60 million. The momentum is far from enough. In addition, the audience generally expects The Mist, and the competition pressure is much more intense than in the previous life. It is destined to be greatly affected by the market. Warner's Hellstar can't even compete with Rivals, and now it has directly started to reduce the number of screens, which is even more miserable. The two companies fought back and forth, and just when The Mist joined the battlefield, the North American theaters chose to support The Mist and allocate resources to it, which naturally matched the media's follow-up reports. During the promotion period, Eva Green frequently appeared in front of fans as the French Rose. Beauty always attracts attention, and Eva's fame is much better than when she debuted in her previous life. When she was the cover girl of the latest issue of The Hollywood Reporter, the sales were even more prosperous and sold out. This made Lyman laugh and cry when he heard the news. He really didn't expect Eva to be so popular with the public. Maybe it has something to do with her down-to-earth acting personality, or maybe Eva rarely appears on magazine covers, and the audience has a very strange mentality. Chapter 495, Mist Premiere. Please subscribe and vote. It was still a little chilly in Los Angeles in February. At 7:30 in the evening, the survey company personnel commissioned by Universal arrived at a cinema. Pedestrians on the roadside came and went, and from time to time they enthusiastically discussed which movie to watch. In the poster column in the cinema hall, the one that took up the most space and the largest space was the new work The Mist directed by Lyman. This movie premiered today, and the screening rate and support strength were significantly higher than other works in the same period. In Hollywood, the director is absolutely superior to the actor in the eyes of the theater, and it is also an absolute indicator of resource tilt. For example, a first-line superstar participates in the work of a new director and competes with the work of a first-line director with a new actor. Before the performance data appears, no matter how to compare, the theater will be more optimistic about the director. This is the industry's contempt chain, and people in the industry will not believe that a certain work cannot be performed without someone. After all, it is the actor's duty to perform well, and it is the responsibility to perform poorly. In other words, the director carries the box office, and the actor is just icing on the cake. At Lyman's level, recovering the cost at the domestic box office is a minimum result, and recovering the cost overseas is a bit unsatisfactory. This is the status and trust that he has earned through his works, and his fame is enough to attract audiences to the cinema, no matter what genre. Give me a ticket for the 8 o'clock show The Mist. After paying the money and taking the ticket, Bella looked at the direction and walked into the second theater. As a film critic, whether it is professional or personal needs, she always has to watch Lyman's works. After finding her seat, people around her also entered the theater one after another. Before the show started, I looked around and found that the attendance rate was quite good. There were about 1,500 seats in the theater, and at a glance, it seemed that there were people in all the seats. It's really lively, Bella thought. In the expectation of the audience, the lights in the theater slowly went out. Blue butterflies were flying, and the camera poured down like cold moonlight. On the big screen, footsteps first came into my ears, followed by the noise of rummaging through drawers and moving things. Finally, the camera moved slowly from bottom to top, like a person holding a camera and peeping, facing the dimly lit room, from left to right, with soothing background music, sweeping across the paintings placed in the corners, like a pair of loyal eyes, recording everything it can see. This section is the beginning of the reshoot that Lyman specifically asked Thomas to do, and with his gradually mature and self-contained light and shadow coordination, the visual experience of tranquility with a bit of weirdness, decadence with a bit of decay is fully displayed. It can be said that it is very cool. It is also what Lyman wanted to shock the audience from the beginning and pull them into the slightly cruel and barbaric dark jungle of The Mist. A good movie requires a sense of substitution, and there is no doubt that Lyman did it. If you look out from the direction of the screen, everyone's eyes in the theater are firmly fixed here. Inside the house, the man is painting, and it is almost finished. In the painting, there is a tough cowboy holding a revolver. His eyes are very firm, as if he will not give in to any difficulties. The painting is completed, and the man turns off the lights to rest. In the darkness, a sudden strong wind blew, and the sound of the house being destroyed could be vaguely heard. Sure enough, the next day, the man who was painting, David, was cleaning up his yard with a worried look on his face. Last night, there was a strong wind and heavy rain. After the wind and rain, there was always a mess, and even the big tree outside the house was blown down. The camera began to shake outward, advancing the plot from a third-person perspective. A thick white fog slowly floated from the depths of the river not far away. David also saw it, but ignored it. It was normal to have fog in the morning after the rain, but this fog was a little bigger. After his wife came out of the house, she told David to go to the supermarket, to buy some daily necessities, to store them so as not to be affected by the storm. His son heard it, and wanted to go to the supermarket. He was only 6 years old, and was at the age of playing and being lively. Just as they were about to leave, the neighbor's black lawyer Brent also wanted to go to the supermarket to purchase supplies. Moreover, his car broke down, so the three of them had to go together. When they arrived at the supermarket, all the nearby residents came. The supermarket was very lively, with people greeting each other, chatting and joking. Most people knew each other, and in the midst of the jubilation, Miss Carmody from the town appeared, and there was a slight chill in the crowd. Carmody was very beautiful, and logically, she should be welcomed by men, but the clerk muttered disgusting words like a lunatic is coming and a nuisance. She was hanging around in this small town, and all she could taste was confusion and indifference. After all, no one liked a woman who was obsessed with reading the Bible, and even if she was beautiful, she couldn't stand the fanatical preaching. The soothing melody sounded again, and wrapped in the bright sunshine, Carmody was like a panicked little animal, hiding from the crowd, while shopping for daily necessities. The camera followed her all the way, capturing her profile without hesitation, making her beauty particularly beautiful, even dazzling. She would pray next to the shelf, pray to God, and then secretly look at the nearby residents. After being unnoticed, she smiled faintly. The camera suddenly pulled away, expanding her whole body, in a lavender dress, flat boots, blooming like a fairy in the corner of the bustling supermarket. Under Lemon's partiality, and also for the subsequent plot reversal and first ups and then downs, Eva's character fell into the hearts of the audience with a hazy and strange temperament. The people in the town hated her, but for the audience, it was inexplicable. She was so beautiful, why was she hated? David also noticed Miss Carmody, but he ignored her, just held his son, and took him to buy toys. He was a man immersed in his own life, with some free and easy meaning. He didn't care about the opinions of the people around him. When he met Carmody, he asked his son to say hello to her and chatted with her. But his free and easy didn't bring him enough good luck. David was about to leave when an old man with a panic and a little blood on his body ran in from outside the supermarket. He shouted that there was a monster in the fog and his companions were eaten by the thick fog, and he was very scared. Then, the thick white fog surrounded him for some reason. This strange sight made everyone a little scared and uneasy, but the black lawyer Brent comforted everyone and warned the old man not to spread rumors. The fog was thick and blocked the vision, but there was definitely no monster. Many people agreed with this view. No matter what the old man said, everyone was just a little uneasy and did not take the thick fog to heart. They thought, wait until the fog dissipates before leaving. Chapter 496 Belief, Subscriptions, Votes Required. The Mist is not a very American horror movie. Traditional American horror movies like blood, violence, and elements such as murder. In short, it is very venting, very exposed, and large scale. Similarly, The Mist is not a James Wan horror movie that mixes the East with the West and forms a system. The Mist does not play the atmosphere of horror with weird background music and scene control. Perhaps it can be said that extreme emotional fluctuations are inherently frightening, and the relaxed atmosphere has disappeared since the thick fog began to appear. This specific background element and multi-angle shooting technique can satisfy most people's hesitation about the unknown itself. On the screen, the supermarket was a little quiet. After waiting for a few minutes in this atmosphere, a woman suddenly clamored to go back. She said that her daughter was waiting for her at home. She also begged someone to give her a ride. After all, this thick fog revealed unusualness everywhere, and she had never seen such a thick fog. The residents were still rational and did not think there would be monsters in the fog, but they still advised the woman to wait before leaving, as she might be in danger. But the woman still left. She was alone, and she kept cursing before leaving. The curses were very unpleasant. She used this method to dispel fear and the unknown. The fog was floating, and the scene gradually became depressing. Finally, a few more people ran out of the supermarket, but the rest were still watching. After all, what the old man said was true, and he tried his best to stop everyone who wanted to leave, repeating it over and over again. Then, a clerk said that there was a noise at the back door, and something was hitting the iron door. David and several men nearby heard it, and went to the warehouse at the back door of the supermarket together. One of the yellow-haired guys said to pull up the rolling shutter and take a closer look at the source of the noise. David disagreed and felt that it was a bit risky, but he was ridiculed by several people for being a coward and a big master in the city. This design is a satire on the class contradictions in the United States. Several people who made sarcastic remarks were dressed like workers who did manual labor, while David was a painter and had assets in the town, and he didn't have to do any physical work. David couldn't persuade him, so the yellow-haired guy led people to open the door. The door was just pulled up, and there was nothing outside except fog. A few people wanted to make some sarcastic remarks, but they saw several tentacles stretched out from the fog and grabbed a few people. Huang Mao and others shouted for help. David pulled his legs and was dragged outside. In a hurry, the clerk next to him who was not pulled found a fire axe and cut off the tentacles. But even so, 2 of the 5 people who came over were dragged into the thick fog. Except for Huang Mao who was pulled by David, the others who had just opened the door and walked out disappeared. The 3 survivors were scared and hurriedly closed the door. They immediately rushed to the front sales area to tell everyone that there was really a monster in the fog. The rationalists, led by the black lawyer, still didn't believe it. Huang Mao and David had to take everyone to see the cut-off monster tentacle. Now, the rationalists were destroyed by the concrete physical evidence, and coupled with the words of the old man and Huang Mao, the supermarket was full of panic for a while. It was also at this time that Brent and others wanted to leave the supermarket very irrationally. Earlier, they were the ones who advised everyone not to leave, and now they are the ones who are leaving on their own initiative. Their inner faith has been defeated, and they are lost. At this point in the story, the main line has become clear, and the layering of the performance has become more and more obvious. At this time, Miss Carmody also preached the theory that God punishes the world, and a large group of residents who have lost their backbone have changed their minds to materialism and become sincere believers in Jesus. In an increasingly chaotic and uneasy environment, religion has undoubtedly gained the fastest development soil. However, the situation is not particularly bad. These people are just looking for something to rely on to feel at ease. They have been trapped for 2 days and need a means of spiritual stability. The same is true for group reporting, which does not mean that they believe in the theory that Carmody said. What is really bad is that a large group of locusts suddenly appeared in the thick fog. They lay on the glass front door of the supermarket and kept hitting it. Then, these locusts flew into the supermarket and slaughtered the surviving residents. Their mouthparts are sharp, and a bloody hole is formed when they are pierced. In the uncontrollable scene, David and others held flamethrowers to drive away and kill the locusts. Then, a miracle happened. Carmody stood there stupidly, reciting the Bible, and a locust lay on her shoulder, but did not hurt her. At this moment, even Carmody believed that she was the messenger sent by God to save the world. Otherwise, why did those monsters only kill others and not hurt her? After the locusts were dispersed and killed, Carmody enthusiastically led everyone to pray silently. In this confused supermarket, she became a god. Pray, pray, pray to God, as if to disperse this endless fog and wash away the darkness in the hearts of the people, so that everyone knows that Carmody is a servant of God. Monsters are the means of the god of death. If you believe in God, you don't have to be afraid of these. The faith is stable, and there are more and more devout believers. They are like a group of moralists, starting to select sacrifices to please the god of death. The first one is a cowardly soldier who did not commit suicide. He begged, he knelt down, and he was crushed to death by the monster in front of everyone, and crushed into a meat paste. It was a huge terrestrial octopus monster, with a body as big as a supermarket, but it did not attack the supermarket in the end and left directly. Carmody said that, as long as one was sacrificed today, the monster would not attack us again. Everyone felt that it was correct, nodded, and continued to pray. In the crowd, David's facial muscles were as stiff as dead. He never thought that things would develop like this. At night, David discussed a way out with a few rational people who were on good terms with him and did not participate in religion. In any case, they could not stay in the supermarket, otherwise they would not be believers and would definitely be the next victims. But on the second day, Carmody set his sights on David's son. The child who greeted her kindly must be the most favored sacrifice for the god of death. She had gone crazy and was immersed in the role of a servant and could not extricate herself. David protected his son, tilted his head slightly, and looked at the groups of familiar and unfamiliar town residents who surrounded him. For so many days, he had never really stood up to lead anything. The woman wanted to save her daughter, so she left. Brent didn't believe in monsters, so they left too. Everyone has their own persistence. When faith collapses, terror will erode everything, making people stupid and blind. At this moment, he suddenly had a stronger belief than before. His son cried in his arms. He was still young and there were infinite possibilities in the future. If someone asks, what is the affection of a father for his children? Then, it should be a mountain that can block everything. The camera locked onto Cage's face, very close, so close that the people watching the movie seemed to be looking directly into his pupils. That look was incomparably crazy, and he had a stronger belief than the most fanatical Carmody. The extremely repressed madness and impulse were sealed in his eyes, like an enraged tiger and leopard, ready to pounce. Most of the time, the role of David is a bystander, and it is difficult to stand out because his emotional changes are too few, not as impressive as Carmody, who can't distinguish between religion and life. But it was not until here that the scattered scenes above formed a flesh and blood David. He was a father. The crowd was forced by his momentum and was still hesitating. At this time, Carmody ran up and tried to snatch the child. During the dispute, a gunshot was heard. The people who were so courageous just now suddenly scattered like birds and beasts and became quiet again. There was no other reason. Carmody was dead. It was really ironic. God's servant who was not hurt by the monster died under the gun, a metaphor for the frequent shootings in the United States, but it cannot be stopped, which is more dangerous than monsters. Then, David and others left the supermarket and rushed into the thick fog under the cold eyes of the onlookers. After sacrificing 2 lives, they found a car, started it and left. Along the way, cold and desperate scenes continued to play out. Brent escaped and survived, but was covered by spider webs and became a human host for the little spider. His life was worse than death. Suicides by hanging were everywhere. Monsters roamed everywhere in the fog, and the town became their paradise. The car stopped at a gas station. The road ahead was confusing, and not knowing where the end was, David picked up a pen and wrote, "Now I'm going to sleep, but I will kiss my son and whisper 2 words in his ear to give him the ability to resist nightmares. One is Hartford. The other is hope." Chapter 497 First Day Box Office. Subscribe, vote. The dual line promotion model of The Mist has made a lot of noise, but the money is a bit too much. Apart from some remote northern states, just looking at a few major ticket suppressing cities, you will find how densely these resources are distributed. Basically, it feels like you can go shopping casually, and you will definitely see various news about The Mist being screened. The next morning, various film reviews and entertainment newspapers were released one after another. Lyman often subscribes to these newspapers with large circulations. At the beginning of the premiere, the comments in the newspapers must have developed in a multipolar manner. After reading the entertainment sections of more than a dozen newspapers and magazines, he found that most of them were positive praises, accounting for 80%, and those that were not too praiseworthy, but recommended accounted for 10%, and the rest were blunt criticisms. Then, he turned on the computer again, and saw that more than 1,300 people had rated it on IMDb, temporarily stabilizing at 7.8 points. Lyman estimated based on his past experience that it was a very good rating among similar works. Even if the score dropped slightly as the number of viewers increased, it was still relatively high. On Rotten Tomatoes, the first day evaluation of The Mist was also fresh, with an index of 87%. Therefore, it is almost certain that the premiere reputation of The Mist will remain very good. Since the reputation is good and the quality of the film is recognized by most of the audience, Lyman has put down his worries. After breakfast, Lyman drove to Firefly Pictures. A group of senior executives gathered together. In the smoke, Lyman, Blake, Garsha, Joseph, Ryan, and Lam, CEO of Blue Butterfly Pictures, and several distribution executives waited in the conference room a little nervously. Even though the conference room is large and the windows are open for ventilation, everyone is still a little anxious before seeing the real results. Then they can't help but say something, chatting and affirming the reputation of the movie. On the side, 7 or 8 employees from the distribution department and the marketing department were making phone calls outside and recording the box office data of each state and then summarizing them. Half an hour later, consistent with the data statistics of the theater, yesterday's North American box office of The Mist was finally released. An employee handed the data to Lyman and others, and everyone came together. Lyman was most sensitive to this kind of data, and he said happily, $5.12 million US. It's a good start. Only 2 shows were shown last night, and the data report showed such performance, which also made everyone breathe a sigh of relief and put their minds at ease. The company continued to cheer, and the fatigue of all employees was swept away. Lyman said again, "Today is Friday. According to this box office result, 7 shows will have a minimum of 17 million. It can collect about 55 million in 3 days over the weekend. For horror and thriller themes, the data is very impressive." Joseph smiled and interrupted, "This is a bit conservative. The audience base on weekends is the largest. It is normal for the daily box office to be 30% to 40% higher than that on weekdays. I think it is not a problem for the weekly box office to exceed 60 million. Seeing these guys too excited, Lemon couldn't help but pour a basin of cold water on them. The box office data of Rivals should be out now. How is the attendance performance? In the entire February schedule, only Rivals and Will Smith's market appeal can compete with The Mist. Therefore, the performance of The Mist depends not only on itself, but also on its competitors. If Rivals is greatly affected after the premiere of The Mist and the box office starts to decline, it can further prove that The Mist can keep its schedule. If the box office of others not only does not decline, but rises, it means that The Mist is not a big threat and the performance is just like that. After all, the box office market is so big. If you eat more, it is equivalent to giving up some of the other works. Don't worry, I have already got the first-hand data from Nielsen. Just wait a little longer. Lyman is cautious and has arranged everything long ago. In the luxurious villa, a red sports car drove out of the garage. Will Smith sat in the driver's seat, and next to him was his agent James Lasseter. In the car, James said, "Well, if the box office return ratio of your movie is still gorgeous, the next movie will be very helpful for you to fight for a 1+1 contract." The 1+1 contract refers to a basic salary of $10 million plus 10% of the North American box office, which is also the most common condition for A-level superstars to participate. In other words, reaching this step is already the ceiling level of actor salary. However, Will Smith is not a person who is easily carried away by success. His success is largely due to his emotional intelligence. There are few black stars who are as sensible as him. Generally speaking, after black people become rich, their minds are always abnormal, and they are always accompanied by various troubles and poor self-management. At this moment, he listened to his agent's words, and said with some concern, "I don't know whether I can get a high salary, but the performance of Rivals may not be particularly ideal." "Are you talking about The Mist?" James Say White is much more confident than him, and smiled. "Even if there is an impact, the box office can't drop by more than 20%. The daily income can be more than 9 million, plus the previous accumulation is enough. Perhaps we should ask Universal Pictures to hold a celebration banquet to boost momentum. Recently, the popularity of reports about you has obviously decreased." Celebration banquet? Let's talk about it later. "Do you know how much the night box office of The Mist is?" Will asked. "I just came here, and I haven't collected any information yet." James and Will Smith chatted casually, and most of the time they were secretly flattering in a very flattering tone. After all, whoever becomes Will Smith's agent will be a millionaire just by taking commissions, so how can he not please him? Moreover, in Hollywood, agents have almost no constraints on their clients, and they can be replaced at any time. There will be no such thing as agents suppressing artists or directly hiding them, unless the status of the two is too different. However, agents with status are almost all senior partners of major brokerage companies and have already left the very low-end economic business. For example, Johnson, who used Lemon's influence to win over countless connections and resources in the circle, no longer cares about the single economic commission and will not spend too much energy on it. However, James C. White is not like that. He was temporarily selected by Will Smith after he fired the previous agent. They have been together for less than 3 months. The two drove to Universal Pictures. Will Smith took James into an office and saw Droney, an executive of the distribution department, and immediately smiled and greeted him politely. After some casual chatting, James asked with a smile, "How's the movie box office?" Deloney frowned and shook his head. "It's not good." This sentence immediately dampened the enthusiasm of the two men. "So what's going on?" Deloney said, "It just earned $7.78 million yesterday, and the downward trend is still continuing." James was shocked. "Wasn't it fine the day before yesterday? And the number of screens has been increased, so how come the box office has dropped a bit? It's been showing for almost 2 weeks. It's normal for the box office to decline, but The Mist poses too great a threat to us. If the data is not good, the theater chain has already asked to remove 300 screens and schedule one less screening. Can't we delay it a little longer and wait and see?" James said anxiously, showing The Mist will have a higher attendance rate and more profits. What other choice is there? But I'm planning to discuss with the chairman to delay it for a few days, until this week. Droney comforted him. However, the movie is doing well overseas. The total global revenue has exceeded 100 million, and it has already paid back. The movie can pay back the investment just by relying on the box office. Other second-rate actors might be very happy, but for Will, he is not in a good mood. 6 or 7 years ago, he could double his investment, and now the Hollywood movie market is still rising. It is not challenging to break the 100 million box office, and it can even be considered a step backward. Then, what about the screening of The Mist? Will is still rational, and knows how to see how his opponent is doing. Droney said helplessly, the investigators have just reported the situation of the theaters. The attendance rates of several theaters randomly checked are not less than 70%, while ours is less than 40%. Perhaps the performance of today's screening is at least 3 times ours. There is no comparison. They can only rise. Alas. Chapter 498. Unpopularity. Please subscribe and vote. Boss, the box office is $21.34 million US. $21.34 million US. Early in the morning, when Lyman just woke up, Lyman, CEO of Blue Butterfly Pictures, reported excitedly on the phone. On the first day of the release of The Mist, the average attendance rate was 76%, and the word of mouth remained good. Of course, Lyman was excited for a reason. The good box office was only one of the reasons. More importantly, he proved that under his management, Blue Butterfly Pictures could achieve North American distribution. Although the publicity channels were still a big problem, at least it could be done. This also meant that he didn't have to worry about being fired suddenly. After all, since he joined Lyman's camp, he had not achieved any outstanding results. After so many months, the company's business development was still limited to the old foundation left over from the past. How could it not make people anxious and worried? Without results, it would be impossible to sit firmly in the position of CEO. He knew this from the beginning. Therefore, the release of The Mist was a test. Lyman thought so too. And the box office of $20 million US in a single day, and it was a thriller horror movie, was considered to have passed the standard. Judging from this performance, Lyman thought, Lyman can still take on the responsibility of distribution. In addition, the box office performance of The Mist greatly compressed the survival space of all works in the same period. Rivals of Love directly cut the box office decline by nearly 40%, with a single day output of $5.68 million US. In short, it's a bit miserable. Speaking of it, these two movies actually have some inherent deficiencies. The Mist has some humanistic thinking, but it is not refreshing enough, and the subject matter is at a disadvantage. Many passers-by don't like it very much. 20 years ago, and 20 years later, there has never been a horror movie in Hollywood history that can win the annual box office champion. And what about Rivals of Love? The content is too old-fashioned and there is nothing new. There are too many movies like comedy and love with a bit of yi nature in Hollywood. The audience is a little aesthetically fatigued because of the serious homogeneity. Speaking of it, it is surprising that the local version of The Previous Life can sell 150 million. Even Universal can't believe it. They made this movie with the overseas market in mind, but the local distribution cost was recovered. This further proves Will Smith's market appeal. That is, he has good audience appeal. But in fact, at least 60% of the reason for the huge sales of Rivals is the release date, because Warner's Hellstar is not expressive enough, and the entire February release date is almost dominated by Rivals. So how can it not be a good box office? But now, the audience has other choices, and the diversion phenomenon is more prominent, which is also the biggest factor in the decline of Rivals' box office. After the release, The Mist stepped on Rivals, but even so, Rivals is still the runner-up in the box office list. Universal also thinks it's okay. Their original prediction of the market is that it can make money, but the possibility of a big explosion is not great. This performance is within their understanding. Until the 3 days of the weekend, The Mist accumulated $63.25 million US in the first week, and Rivals was $36.22 million. Judging from the data alone, it was almost crushed. but Rivals was screened for more than a week first, and the time cannot be completely compared. It has already eaten up the most bonus, so it can only be said that the box office continuity was not maintained well. The Los Angeles Express commented, director Lyman's highly anticipated new film, The Mist, has undoubtedly won the box office championship this week, proving once again that he seems to be unexpectedly good at any subject matter. Looking back on director Lyman's past works, the wide range of genres and his high level of control can't help but remind people of another director, Spielberg. However, Lyman's transformation has undoubtedly been faster and more successful, and his path to becoming a director has been smoother and more successful. This makes people wonder, where does his directing ability come from? The Hollywood Observer. It is obvious that The Mist will dominate the February schedule. From the data disclosed by the theaters, there is no threatening rival at all. Last week's weekly box office champion Rivals has been far surpassed. According to the survey data released by Blue Butterfly Pictures, moviegoers have a positive evaluation of The Mist. In a random field interview of 1,000 people, more than 700 people gave it an A score, more than 100 gave it a B, and the remaining less than 200 people had some opinions and did not agree. Blue Butterfly Pictures did not give up the guidance of publicity after the film was released. Moreover, the good results also meant that the news about The Mist in the next period of time naturally represented traffic value, and it would increase its promotion efforts. However, these trivial matters were temporarily abandoned by Lyman, because Scott Ross had reached an agreement with the shareholders of the board of directors, and welcomed Lyman's investment. After several rounds of communication with the negotiating representatives, Lyman officially spent more than $120 million to get 37% of Digital Domain's shares. Scott Ross, the former second largest shareholder, reduced his holdings by 8%, cashing out more than $23 million, and only held 7% in his hands, continuing to serve as CEO. After settling the Digital Domain side, Lyman officially made an offer to Cameron for negotiation. It was at this time that Cameron announced that Digital Domain would change its owner. Because of the discord with the board of directors, almost no one had discussed Lyman's entry with him. It also shows how unpopular this guy is. He had invited his friend Stan to join Digital Domain, but because of the proposal to kick Scott out and replace the company's CEO, they fell out directly. Two of the three founders wanted to withdraw. However, Cameron was still quite enthusiastic and expressed his willingness to talk to Lyman. After all, this guy restructured the special effects studio that served him personally, and it was also a time when he was burning money. If someone gave him money, why not? After getting a positive answer, Lyman also began to prepare funds. He did not hesitate too much. The $200 million he got from the French film companies was definitely not enough, and he knew it himself. The reason why he still borrowed so much, in addition to not wanting to pay too high a price, was also because a second share of The Walking Dead and the last overseas share of New York Trip and the offline DVD market revenue had been deposited into the account of Firefly Pictures by several partners. It was about $120 million US. Of course, Gustav still had to pay back the debt. After communicating on the phone, Lyman paid $50 million US, and the remaining debt plus interest was nearly $75 million, but Gustav was happy to postpone it for another 3 months. After several collaborations with Firefly Pictures, Lionsgate's market share has improved rapidly, and the profits from the cooperation are high. Lionsgate would rather Lyman not pay it back, so that they can hold shares in Firefly Pictures and deepen their cooperative relationship. After the funds were ready, Lyman immediately invited Cameron, and the other party agreed immediately. Chapter 499 Cameron, subscribe, vote. Honey, why don't you let me accompany you to the party tonight? Susie Amis asked in confusion. The woman who once played the role of Ruth's granddaughter in Titanic is Cameron's fifth wife. Well, it's a very common love affair between an old man and a young woman. Men always like young people, preferably forever 18 years old, and Cameron does just that. He has an extremely rich love history. Before he became a director, he worked as a truck driver for several years, so his first wife was an outsider and a waitress at the truck club at the time. The second one was the producer of his project, Jalan Hurd, who had a wide network of people in the circle. Cameron was able to transform into a director, and this person made great efforts. The third wife is Catherine Bigelow, a very talented female director who likes to shoot very masculine works, mostly adventure and war themes. The fourth is Linda Hamilton, who played Connor's mother in Terminator. Tonight's dinner is not suitable for women to join. After all, this is a business dinner, which is very important for negotiations. Cameron said lightly. Yes, today's dinner is indeed very important, and it is of great significance to Lyman. In a sense, this dinner will affect the future development direction of Firefly Pictures, and will also determine whether Firefly Pictures has the opportunity to enter the era of special effects movies. Although Lyman does not like popcorn movies, there is no doubt that he does not like them, but cannot miss them. February 15th, evening. The private club next to the Hollywood Walk of Fame soon welcomed two guests. This is Lyman and Cameron. Cameron is already 50 years old at this time, and looks a little old, with a lot of white hair. However, Lyman knows that under this not so young appearance, he is indeed full of arrogance. Lyman took the lead, and extended his hand with a smile. Hello, Mr. Cameron. Hello, Mr. Last. Just a simple greeting. The two people sat opposite each other politely, and no one had the intention to take the initiative to talk. Speaking of which, the two must know each other. After all, they are both directors, but it is also true that they are not familiar with each other. After a while, Lyman, who had less experience in the industry, took the initiative to speak. Mr. Cameron, can you talk about digital domain? Cameron nodded and said with some regret, I never thought of getting to this point today, but the fact is that I plan to give up my shares in digital domain. So, Mr. Last, what price are you willing to take over? $45 million US. How about it? I heard that you bought the shares held by the shareholders of Digital Domain at a premium of 20%, right? Cameron pretended to be puzzled and said, I'm also a shareholder of Digital Domain, and now I'm the second largest shareholder. Well, the meaning of the words is why there is no premium. However, the reason for Lyman's premium is to win over the management, but Cameron is obviously not among them. In fact, he is one of those abandoned by Digital Domain. Of course, on the other hand, Cameron took the initiative to give up Digital Domain. Mr. Cameron, that's not right. Other factors shouldn't be involved tonight, and such a big deal cannot be decided by me alone. As far as I know, your offer to Industrial Light and Magic was exactly $45 million US. They rejected you, but I'm willing to pay the money. That's different. Your needs are different from those of Industrial Light and Magic. Cameron smiled slyly. How about 60 million? This is not very difficult for Firefly Pictures. Indeed, spending 60 million to buy Cameron's shares in Digital Domain is not a big deal for Firefly Pictures. It is even higher than the budget investment of a non-blockbuster movie. However, Lyman suddenly asked, have you ever regretted all this? If you had not been so resolute in your proposal to the board of directors 2 years ago, the development of Digital Domain would not be hindered and bottlenecked like it is now. Cameron held back his temper and retorted, I compromised once, and there will be a second and third time. I still don't think Scott is a suitable leader. But he set up the technical department of Digital Domain, and he is also the top talent in the visual effects industry. What do you think? Lyman chuckled and did not intend to convince a paranoid person. After all, this guy had fallen out with countless close partners and wives. Cameron had neither management skills nor the willingness to spend time managing the company. In other words, he only appreciated the new technologies of those movies. Directors who become top directors basically climb to the top of the pyramid independently, and Cameron has the lowest desire for this. He would rather go deep sea diving than spend time on these things. This is why his wealth is so embarrassing compared to his talent. Look at Spielberg, George Lucas or Lyman now. It is easy for them to cash in the connections accumulated by selling big works. It can even be said that countless financing institutions are rushing to give money, but Cameron has never done so. If DreamWorks wants to raise funds, or Lucasfilm, there will be no shortage of people to give money. What they lack is how to maintain autonomy in front of various types of capital. You can say that Cameron has no ambition. The directors in the circle of paranoid directors he gathers are all the most paranoid. Or it can be said that he succeeds and fails because of paranoia. No, 45 million US dollars. Lemon insisted, my offer has already overflowed to a certain extent, and you are no longer interfering in the operation of the company, right? Instead of continuing to contact other people and wasting energy, you might as well accept me. Cameron hesitated for a moment, and seeing that he could not persuade Lemon to increase the price, he did not intend to drag it out. As Lemon said, Digital Domain did not welcome him, and he did not like this company. What Digital Domain left for him would only make him sulky. Okay, I agree to the price of 45 million US dollars, but all the money must be paid in one lump sum, and no installments are accepted. That's absolutely no problem. Lemon nodded. After the initial deal was reached, the two men relaxed a lot. To be honest, Cameron still admired Lemon very much. As a director, he envied his output. Afterwards, the two chatted about the position of director. As they were talking, Cameron talked about a documentary he was working on with 20th Century Fox. So, he immediately asked, Lemon, what do you think of IMAX technology? Lemon raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion, IMAX technology still requires the cooperation of theaters? Have you convinced those misers? Cameron has been experimenting with 3D IMAX technology for several years, and people in the industry know that he has been experimenting with documentaries, but they don't know what other meanings he has in asking this. Chapter 500 The King of Movies. Subscribe, vote. The reason Cameron asked this was that the experimental technology was burning too much money. The studio he cooperated with, Fox, did not receive the maximum support. He did not have much savings, so he wanted to bring in a few more people. As for the sudden question, it was because he thought that Lemon's company seemed to be quite rich. He said he would take 45 million US dollars without blinking an eye. He did not know that Firefly Pictures was already in debt of more than 260 million, which was close to 20% of its market value. You want me to invest in your studio? Lemon finally understood what Cameron meant, and then asked, yes, I believe that the future is the world of 3D IMAX. This technology is used in movies, and the viewing experience of the audience is amazing. I don't think anyone will refuse this very novel experience. It will open up a huge gap between the previous shooting technology. Talking about these, Cameron was quite talkative, and even excited. Stop, Cameron, I agree with your point of view, but I want to ask, if I invest, what can I get? This? Lemon, you only need to invest 10 million, no, 20 million. You can get the right to use this new technology. I believe that will definitely bring you enough benefits. Right to use? Lemon smiled. That is to say, I can't interfere with the operation and management, and I don't have the patent for the technology. Yes. Cameron continued to fool him. We are almost successful in the experiment. What you spend now can be regarded as an admission ticket. How about this? I can pay this money, but I want the same year investment rights in your next project. For this, I'm willing to pay 20 million US dollars. Why? Cameron was a little puzzled. My new project? Yes, I'm very optimistic about your next work. For this, you have been preparing for so long, and I'm very interested in it. How about it? That's impossible. Cameron said, I will only cooperate with the top studios for my works. What he said embarrassed Lemon a little, but it is undeniable that first-class directors will only cooperate with first-class studios unless they start their own company. After all, what Firefly can offer, the Big Six can also offer, and with better resources. In this regard, Firefly Pictures really has no foundation. Okay, I was abrupt. Lemon turned over the matter and did not mention investing in IMAX technology again. The right to use? That's useless. Compared with what he paid, what he can get is almost a false reputation, and there are still many restrictions. Perhaps it is also because Cameron, after going through the digital field, is no longer willing to have outsiders intervene and cause disagreements. Moreover, in addition to the technology, the important thing about the Avatar project is that it is difficult to copy. Is the script of Avatar difficult? In fact, it is very simple, so simple that it is cliché. All the directorial works of Cameron are not complicated. Like Titanic, a rich girl falls in love with a poor boy, but the key is how to make the cliché not so cliché. The same is true for Avatar. Cameron prepared for this for several years and started the project only after the preparations were almost perfect. Cameron himself is not a professional. Compared with the so-called meaning of movies that should inspire thinking, he prefers to use new technology to tell simple scripts. As for the future direction of the film, Lyman stood on the shoulders of giants and certainly knew it clearly. But because of this, he had self-knowledge and knew that he could not shoot Avatar. For a director like Cameron, who is a technology fanatic and paranoid, if Titanic could be shot with digital technology in 1997, he would not use film. He always likes to be ahead of the times. There is no doubt that Avatar will be successful, and Cameron will use his own strength to change the aesthetic orientation of movie fans around the world, usher in the spring of special effects spectacle movies, and inject a second wave of development into Hollywood. If there is number 3D IMAX, watching movies online seems more comfortable, and watching at home alone does not need to go to the cinema. But today in 2005, this layout is too advanced, and except for Avatar, no other movie has replicated this hot momentum again. In fact, in order to promote IMAX screens, Fox has been operating in the theater chain for a long time, after the Paramount Act, although it is stipulated that studios cannot hold theater channels. In fact, the 6 majors are still influencing theater choices everywhere. In other words, if there were no 6 major pushes, the cinema would not spend a lot of money to replace the projection technology and start the commercialization of IMAX. As for Firefly Pictures, IMAX can't be used, no matter how hard it is. By 2020, film has not been completely abandoned, and digital technology will only be one of the shooting methods. For movies, naturally, what is more suitable will be chosen. Anyway, no matter what, it is just a means of shooting movies, and when IMAX technology matures, even if there is no so-called ticket for Cameron, it can be completely converted in the later stage, which is also more convenient. Most IMAX versions of movies are converted in the later stage, because the cost of shooting with IMAX technology alone is too high, the risk is too great, and the possibility of profit is too small. So it's just like that. But there is no doubt that Cameron was able to decisively bet on the direction of the trend before the times changed, which is already awesome enough. After all, he didn't use external plugins. If he took a wrong step, his career would be gone. What does the concept of IMAX mean, and how different is it from the existing film technology? It's still a fog. Even Disney should have cooperated with Cameron at the beginning, but after a year of persistence, it could not see the charm of IMAX technology and completely lost patience with Cameron's lion's mouth and not giving the right to operate. Cameron also contacted Universal in the middle, and finally it was taken over by 20th Century Fox. Interestingly, in order to better integrate the viewing experience of IMAX, Cameron cooperated with Weta Digital to develop the Simulcam photography system that was quite famous in later generations. A set of visual effects specially used for integrating virtual scenery and actors. Their actors only need to stand in front of the green screen. Although the surroundings are empty, from the monitor connected to the computer, they are standing in a pre-planned virtual environment with CG images. In other words, the actors are assisted by motion capture equipment and almost do not need scenery, because the scenes are all fake, and the performance can be completed only in the studio, which saves a lot of effort, and the logistics shooting team almost does not need a scenery group. This kind of technological innovation is huge, but Lyman's demand is not so great, and Cameron will definitely sell IMAX technology to many studios. This is the price paid to theaters for promoting IMAX giant screens. After all, I spent money on the renovation, but in the end, not many movies were released. Isn't it a huge waste? A small move affects the whole body. This is not something Cameron can stop. His current confidence will also compromise with reality. It's just that he is still dreaming and has not woken up. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.